Well met. This has been Brode, and you're watching Born to be
Cosmo.
Oh, snap.
Welcome to Born to be Cosmo, Marvel Snap card game podcast, where we talk about all things related to the Marvel Snap card game. I am joined by my two co-conspirators and co-hosts, Nate Wolfe and ZombiesGoNomNom. Cosmo is a twice-monthly podcast. Last weekend, I thought to myself, pretty slow news week. Maybe we'll get off easy. This week happened, and clearly Ben Brode had other plans for us.
Yeah.
So
he's keeping it Cosmo.
Ben Brode is definitely keeping it something. An interesting patch. So, I propose that we just dive right in, and like Ben Brode, we'll also attempt to keep it Cosmo.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just jump right in because there's a ton of stuff. So first up, we were talking about the OTA updates. So over the air updates. So they've been doing this now for 6 weeks. Second Dinner's been pushing out, like they call them OTA updates or over the air updates, meaning that they're server side updates where you don't have to download a new client or a new patch or whatever, a new app. And they've been doing balance changes this way, and it's been pretty successful, I would say. So yeah, it was done as like a pilot program, right? And I think that it's been relatively well received. And yeah, so it looks like they were doing this as a pilot. We will continue to see them, but maybe not as frequently. I guess we'll see. Sounds like the final OTA update for the pilot will be May 25th. I don't know if we have additional news, like what they're going to do after that or not, but personally, I kind of enjoyed it. Like it's just, it keeps things pretty fresh. And I like that they're not afraid to make like minor balance adjustments. And honestly, it's been a little bit, they're fine tuning things. And then it's also kind of humorous because like Nebula came out and then they boosted like all the Guardians of the Galaxy cards. Right. And, but overall, I think it's been pretty successful. So I guess we'll see whether they decide to continue doing this, or like right after you do a pilot program, you have to go evaluate, was it successful? Was it not? And we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, they said they're going to continue to do them. They said they would do them less frequently, so less than 3 times a month, because they don't do it during big patch week. So we didn't have an OTA update this week.
Even if they did it like once a month, would be fat, like more than Hearthstone does. So like,
well, they kind of said in the thing, basically, we like the reception. This was positive. It sounds like they're going to keep doing it, just not at a weekly pace, which I think is fine because honestly, you're going to run out, I think, pretty quickly if you're doing it once a week. Like there is such a thing as like, too much change because then you never have any kind of stable environment. So
well,
I think it's good that it was fun though. Like I'm glad they did this and they tested it out and clearly it was good for the game, right? Like it was very positively received. So I'd expect off of like what they said, we'll still probably see like at least one, I'd imagine, OTA between patches, if not more, but no longer like, all right, this week, every Thursday.
Well, they should be doing changes, not for change's sake, but because, an underpowered card is not seeing any play or an overpowered card needs to be slightly tuned down. And so, if they're doing it for a good reason, like if it's like, oh crap, it's Thursday and we haven't selected our balance patches, let's pick something, but as long as they're doing it for the right reason. But I think doing it a little bit less would be fine. But
yeah, I think they'll probably, because I think that was the big issue, right, with the old patches was we would wait a month for a patch, and then if that patch didn't deliver, it was like, well, now they can't change anything until like the next month, and that was really rough, right? So they can't change everything about a card, but the fact that they can make those kind of on the fly adjustments, like it kind of saved the MODOK season, right? The fact that they were able to do that with Zabu and Surfer.
When
If
you
they
were
didn't do that, like it would have been over.
when you were doing your like meme a day until Shuri got nerfed, how many did you do?
I think we got up to like 24 or 25. I thought it was just gonna be a fun little thing we did for a few days or like a week. And I'm pretty sure it was over 3 weeks. And I
Yeah.
was just like, oh God, I was running out of material. I was just like, how long the Hearthstone,
You
how
were
long will this go on?
you were crowdsourcing Simpsons memes
I
because you
was.
ran out. It was insane.
It was
Uh,
nutty.
So yeah, you couple the OTA changes with the better metagame. It keeps it fresh. I think the thing that we like about Snap is that every month feels like new expansion month, and then you get a few balance updates. Minor tweaks that don't necessarily change the meta radically, but introduce some additional cards into existing archetypes. I don't know. It was really good. I have not heard anyone say, I hate these updates. I want them to stop. I think a few of us scratched our head with the initial one when they made Enchantress a 4/6. We were kind of like, okay, it seems a bit much. And they ended up walking that one back, but it wasn't that bad in the end. And it actually did have a pacifying effect for certain archetypes that were looking to get quite overheated. And the timing seemed to be pretty good.
Can I ask a real quick question? Like, zombies, because you're like a full-time content creator, right? Is it good for you as a content creator? Because now you can say like, hey, here's a bunch of Orka decks. Hey, here's some Luke Cage decks, or whatever. Like when a card that was not seeing any play at all is now magically playable, and like it seems kind of cool to me. Like I remember seeing these posts on Twitter, like, hey, you've got Orca, like this crappy card. Well, it's actually playable now. Like, hey, here's some decks to try out. That seems like a kind of
that's kind of how I felt. Like I really like the Orca change stands out to me because he's another one of those cards that was just like it's funny when they announced him, he was the one Series 4 that got held back, right?
Yeah, because of a bug.
Because there was like a bug, so he didn't actually drop with Series 4. He came like a little bit later, and then he came out, and it was just like, man, this card doesn't really do anything. It's like just a worse big thing, and you have this strict condition, and just didn't really. It's almost like it wasn't a card. It's like it's just taking up a spot there, but it's not doing anything. And when they buffed it, it's like, wow, now I'm not saying like Orca's S tier. It's not some like crazy meta breaker, but like you can actually win games off the back of it. And it's super fun because it's basically like they took my collection and just gave me a new card. And that's the best thing I think about these is it either takes a totally unplayable card and gives it like a fighting chance. In worst case, you at least had some fun like experimenting with it if it doesn't work out. And then even like Binks mentioned this in chat, and I think it's really good thing. It's like they can make a more kind of out there change, like buffing the Enchantress to 4/6, and it's like, well, maybe this was a little bit too much. We can like find a happy medium. Like changing her to a 4/5 now, so it's nice to see that flexibility of them being able to change stuff.
It's one of the things that I love about digital card games as opposed to paper, because like banning cards is never fun, but when they can fine tune something, it's great. So
that's one of the best things about digital card games, and I'm really happy it feels like they're taking a much more proactive stance with it, with like trying out the OTAs, and so since that was all positively received, because that's one thing that there really wasn't, it's almost like no complaints about, were the OTAs. People were generally, I think, very happy with the changes overall, and that can be kind of rare when you make balance changes, right? Like there's always someone who's going to be mad. I'm sure there were some people who were, but I just didn't see a lot of it, which is kind of nice because we had some rough ones before that, right? So
I genuinely think no one was. Wow, I'm sure there was an outlier,
but yeah, you know what I mean.
No, I mean, like, and let's be real here for a second. Like, there is a lot to cover tonight, and it's not all going to be rainbows and sunshine. But I think this is the one area that we can all positively say that this is good. We want to see more of it. I think there's something for everyone in here. While I wasn't too hot on the Orca buff, not that I minded that Orca was buffed. I really like the collector buff. You see collector in more decks, and it just kind of maybe gives people a little more of a push to experiment. So discard decks with the collector, bounce decks with the collectors. The jury's out if collector's optimal, but
I've been seeing him in a lot of the Kitty Pryde decks that I've been facing, and yeah, well, it's neat when a card is like not, you know, everyone's playing collector a long time ago, and then they stopped, and now it's back, and it's like, oh, okay, well. But anyways, I think actually this is probably a good segue. Zombies, you want to take us through the balance changes? Because it's been 2 weeks since we recorded, and there's been 2 updates since then. So we've got some cards to go through.
Yeah, we can run through it here. Nothing too crazy. We got the Orka change, like previously mentioned. So Orka goes from 6'9" to 6'11", means it can be a 6'16" on its own, and that is unnerfed destroyer. 6'16" is pretty big. And especially when your opponent's not really expecting it. A lot of times, you know, when someone's not really playing anything into a lane for most of the game, you just kind of figure they gave up on it. Or if they do slam a big 6-drop, you're thinking like what, like 10 power, 12 power. You're not really counting for like 16's a ton.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was a really big difference. I know it's like, oh, it's only 2 power, but as we've seen, especially with some of these other changes, like Enchantress was only 2 power, and that was like a huge buff. So small increases can do kind of a lot because it's a game of small numbers, right? So Orka change, really cool. Glad they did it. It's nice. Orka's like an actual, he found a home now in the ongoing stuff. And I had a lot of fun playing with this card when they changed it. And so yeah, good stuff there. Collector's a neat one too. I was kind of curious. I didn't think they'd do it, but I love how they actually called back to beta Collector, because Collector was a menace in the beta before he got changed. He was actually super busted. Like, you think you could lean heavily on the Dino deck now? Oh man, with like when you're like pool 2, early pool 3, Collector was crazy. For those who didn't know the original Collector, he was a 2/0, but whenever you added another card to your hand, he got +2, and he got out of hand really quickly. And so they acknowledged it in the dev comment, which I thought was cool for all the people who maybe didn't know what the card used to be. But they're like, yeah, we want him to be a bit better. So they gave him, it doesn't look like a ton on the surface, just a 1 power bump, but I can't like overemphasize how big the difference is between a 1 power and a 2 power card. Like, you feel it a lot. You feel that quite a bit. 1 power when you're maybe a little less for a 1-drop, but when you're paying 2 or more for a 1 power edition, it better be doing something really strong, because it is such a huge like loss of power. Like, you're doing like almost nothing. That's why like Black Widow feels so bad, right? Like, I think that's one card, you know, if they want to do another OTA, that's one that I'd like to see changed to maybe a 2/2, because 2/1s feel terrible.
I think we can leave Black Widow.
I know that's one. It's gonna annoy people a bunch, so I feel like that's why they're probably more hesitant to do it, because they're like, do we really want to encourage people to be playing Black Widow, especially when Darkhawk is good? Might be a little bit of a risky decision.
Binks posted a deck that has Black Widow in it, and I saw it all over ladder today. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Thanks, Binks.
That's very
Thanks, Binks. And Black Widow was part of it.
That's cool to see. I love the card, but man, I feel that. But the whole thing with collectors, like, the 1 point mattered, and we just got Kitty, right?
Yeah.
And Kitty is huge for this. Like, the fact that you're bouncing a card every turn. I got hit by like a 10 power collector more than once, and I was kind of floored. I didn't expect it, but it really like pumps up. So between the buff and the fact that he essentially got like way better support with Kitty coming back, the card's like a real card now, which is super cool, because everyone kind of dumped him after pool 2, right? Like, not many people were playing the collector because he just got better cards. It just didn't really fill a role. Yeah, it was just too meh. Even in the decks he was designed for, like the Moon Girl stuff, it just wasn't really worth it. Another 2/1 to a 2/2 is Luke Cage. This was cool because it's like everyone, including me immediately, it's like, Cerebro, yes! You know, we get ruined all the time by all these locations. And I used to love playing Cerebro. I played so much Cerebro.
I've been seeing like the Luke Cage and Hazmat in a bunch of Sarah decks as well.
Yeah, that was one that caught on even before the buff, but people started bringing it back, like a Toxic Sarah. I always thought it was like a fun idea, but it never felt like it was doing any. I always felt kind of bad because you'd have that like one big stat stick in Typhoid Mary, but then the mirrors, like you gave them something to Shang-Chi, and I was like, oh, this is annoying. I mean, yeah, you could save it to the end, I guess, but I was never like I loved the concept, but it always felt like worse, felt more like janky. Which I mean, it probably does still feel that way with the buff. But this is a cool buff because they specifically called out Cerebro, and it's like, oh, cool, your Cerebro 2 deck now. Luke Cage can stop locations from like ruining it if it's a decrease. And a bunch of people tried it out. I tried it out. It's fun, and the format is in like a better place to where Cerebro can like more healthily exist. I'm not saying it's going to be good, but it can exist and win games sometimes. Because before it was all Thanos and Red Skull, and it was like, I don't know how the Cerebro gamers did it. Like, good on them for sticking to it, because I would have lost my sanity trying to play Cerebro during the Shuri and Thanos metas. It's just, and I love Cerebro. Cerebro is my jam. I remember I'll still never forgive them from taking Cerebro 5 from me. With the launch Sarah and Mysterio.
Yeah. Cerebro 5. Just play Cerebro 4. Easy.
Yeah. I know, man. I was actually excited for that when they changed Sarah. Oh, how it was a lot of cope. Anyway, not to focus too much on the copium. We have more changes here. They changed. It's even more. We have like 3 things, right? Like one isn't even pictured, right? Because we got this week's changes with Wave and Death and.
That was from the patch. So we're going to talk about the balance
Oh,
patch
okay.
and
It's a
all that
separate
comes
section.
with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right, so I'll focus on this then. So Drax, they changed Drax. This is kind of a minor thing, but they made him less bad if he misses. So he's a 4/6 instead of a 4/5, but he only gains +2. I've been actually playing a bunch of Drax in the lane lockdown deck, and I really, really enjoy that deck. We were talking before on Discord. I think it's criminally underplayed. It blows my mind that, I mean, it's probably not a bad thing, but it's so good. Like, that's all I play, and it just wins games so much because you're instead of having to like counter your opponent or like strictly outpower them, I just say like, no, you can't play your cards here. Deal with it. And it's great. It works really well against a lot of the popular decks that I think are putting up a lot of numbers. So we'll talk about that later. But I've been putting Drax in that build, and it is nice. Like, I have noticed, like, it's a small thing, but sometimes you do miss on the Guardians, and like a 4/6 is a lot better than a 4/5. A 4/5 is pretty bad. So, and then it's a 4/8 if it doesn't miss, and it's fine, nothing to write home about, but you get under Shang-Chi, which is nice. Rock Slide took a hit. He jumped in front of, Mr. President, Darkhawk, taking the bullet for him. This was a really minor thing. Rock Slide's still a really good card. Hey, maybe we run him in Cerebro 5 now. Yeah, but this didn't do very much, nor do I think it was intended to do very much. Just like,
just tone it down a tiny bit,
just a tiny bit, which is fine. It seems fine. Speaking of toning things down a bit, Enchantress was a little bit too thick for them, so they decided to lower her back down from a 4/6 to a 4/5. Still more than she was before. It's good.
Still a good card.
Yeah, like, still going to show up in more decks than she used to, and feels much more of a, like, I think a healthy place for a tech.
Oh my gosh, I've been running more Enchantress lately than Shang-Chi because of all of the between like all the Darkhawks and the Dinos and all the other stuff. It's just all the Patriot decks. It's like super handy. You just don't want to play her for.
There feels like there, or at least was, and there might still be. The meta's a little bit different depending where you're at on the ladder. But I feel like there are genuinely more ongoing things to hit right now than purely big things, because not every deck is going big. And it's nice to see it. And Enchantress, it's cool to see her finally having a bit of a home outside of Sarah, because, I mean, she's one of the bigger tech cards in the game. And before, it was just like, even if your opponent was doing powerful ongoing stuff, it wasn't consistent enough. And it was such a 4/4 when it's not doing its tech thing is really, really bad. And we'll probably talk about that later if we touch on High Evolutionary. Like, a 4/4 is a really bad tempo play when it has no text, which is what Enchantress had sometimes. Like, she just didn't have a target. And so 4-5 definitely better. 4-6 was I really enjoyed it, but I get why they pulled it back.
Yeah, I was maybe a little too much, but I missed it. I noticed the difference though, because especially
we all noticed the difference. Yeah,
playing a lot of like lane control, and like when you have nothing to do on turn 4, like having to play a tempo Enchantress is awful. Oh, it's so bad. But
so it was nice that they did that, and it's cool because this sets some precedent, right? Like this shows us, hey, we're not afraid to take a little bit more of a risk and like bumping something a bit, but we're not gonna let that thing like stick around for like a month and then be like, all right, we'll change it, we'll adjust it again. Like I like how they were kind of quick on like, all right, we've gotten some
oops, too
initial
much
data, and we're gonna just tone it back a bit. Still better than it was. Nice to see. Speaking of things that are nice to see, Venom, this was super hype. I was so excited about this. And I still haven't played a ton of Destroy, but the one thing I did try with it was really fun. And so Venom went from a 3-1 to a 3-3. Venom just has not seen a lot of play like ever. Even in like the Destroy decks, he was never really finding a home, though maybe now that changes with the wave stuff. But it's a shame because Venom's a very iconic card, and he's like one of my favorite characters. That's why I like all the Venomized variants. So it was kind of sad they didn't really have a home. So it's nice that I definitely understand why they wanted to be kind of cautious with the effect, but it's nice to see them buff this card. I've seen people try cool stuff with it, like on the Infinite decks of the week, we featured someone who got to Infinite with it was a Sarah Surfer, but it had like a Destroy stuff in it, a bunch of Destroy packages. It ran Nimrod. And it's funny when you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, there are quite a few, like a lot of the relevant Destroy cards are 3-drops, right? Like you have Deathlock, you have Venom.
Killmonger is 3 also.
Killmonger's at 3, and then you can sprinkle in some cheaper Destroy stuff like Carnage and Bucky Barnes and whatnot. And I was like, this actually kind of makes a lot more sense than I thought it would on paper. So I haven't really gotten a chance to try that, but that's just kind of one of the things I saw people trying with the newly buffed Venom. So that was cool. And then I think I shared it with you, Nate. I played this it was like a Nimrod focused deck, but it had Galactus as like a backup plan because he just works well with Nimrod. And that deck was so much fun, and that utilized like the new Venom. And his power did really make a difference sometimes. And it was cool seeing Nimrod finally work. Because I went on like a whole rant about how like Nimrod's finally getting his time in the sun after being like neglected in the corner during his whole season where he was the pass card, because he could not thrive in the meta where like the game was when he came out.
Yeah,
so it's cool he's finally getting his moment. But yeah, those are all the OTA balance changes, and we have one more round in this kind of trial period where they're doing it weekly. That's going to be occurring next week because we just got the patch this week.
Right.
They don't do OTAs on patch week. Makes sense. So that'll be the last one, but we can still expect to see them happen, just probably not on a weekly basis. So a little bit less regular, but I think that's fine as long as they are still willing to do them.
Yeah, I heard they were buffing Galactus in the next OTA. I can't wait.
Can you imagine? Start that rumor along. Oh man. People would lose their minds.
Don't do this to us.
Playing with fire.
They're making him a 10-10, sorry, 10 power. I'm just joking.
Yeah. They did make one additional change on the last OTA update. They also changed some of the frequency of how often certain locations appear.
Thank God. Some of these were rough. As a
This was cool that they did this.
Not this month, but last month I was playing so much Galactus, and there were so many just unplayable locations that it made it really hard.
Now you know what like a fraction of the life of a Cerebro player is like.
Yeah, yep.
They fold to a stiff breeze.
So here it is. They said, as our library of locations increases, we'll be making ongoing adjustments to this to hit the sweet spot that we like for dynamic games. To that end, we're reducing the appearance weights of a few of our existing locations, which means they'll show up less frequently in your games. It's unlikely that you'll consciously observe these changes, but we thought you'd like to know. So here they are: Adelan, Krakoa, Lechugia, Morag, Plunder Castle, Blue's favorite, Sanctum Santorum, and Subterranea. Yeah.
Fun fact: I don't hate Plunder Castle nearly as much with the advent of Jeff.
Yeah.
But if anyone's ever co-opted with me before and Plunder Castle pops up, it's like my trademark. Oh boy, it's my favorite, Plunder Castle. But
Yeah.
Adelans and they're all annoying. Subterranea, like, ugh. I still feel like I see Adelan a lot, but
Me too.
it's
I
hard
think
to.
we just remember it because it's so annoying.
Yeah, it's so
I'm trying to
crippling.
find the numbers because we do actually have someone. I think it was like Get Wrecked broke down the numbers and like we got to actually here it is. We got to actually see what these went to in terms of value. So it tells us like common to uncommon, rare to ultra rare. But what does that actually mean in terms
Yeah.
of percentage? Common locations show up 70% of the time. So 70% time they can show up. Uncommon locations, 23%.
Okay.
Rare is 7%. And ultra rare is less than 1%. That is, I believe, limited to like the really crazy ones like Ego, now Krakoa after this change. I'm honestly surprised they didn't put that one at that point to begin with. But all right. I think like World Ship is up there. They're not many, so that's why it's the ultra rare one. Yeah, there are 3. So I think those are the only 3.
There must be another modifier. I don't know if it's intended or a bug, but like you seem to see locations appear in successive games.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of
despite the
people
rarity.
have noticed that. I've definitely noticed that too. But it's also like one of those things like you can look at it on a tracker, and sometimes I notice it. It feels like there's in groups, but I don't know. I don't know what reason or if there is something there how they handle it, but it definitely feels like, and maybe that just has to do with the probability distribution, right? Like the fact that these locations are common, they just end up showing up a lot more of the time.
Yeah, but that's just it. It's the ones that you've distinguished as being rare. Like I'll give you an example today. I saw Plunder Castle twice back to back. Or that happens often with like Adelan. I saw Lee get Adelan too. Like I don't know if it's intended. And I'm not even suggesting this as a conspiracy theorist. This might actually be a good question to ask Glenn Jones on Discord because I don't think they would be they would answer truthfully.
Yeah, because I think they've been asked about that before, and I think they said no to it. But I'm not positive on that. I'd have to check. I don't know for sure.
I don't remember seeing it, but it does feel like there's some kind of like variable that gets triggered that increases the likelihood of it reappearing. Although it could just be my own bias, but I don't know. I've seen it so much, and not just for my games either. Games that I'm spectating as well, where you don't have that same kind of emotional investment.
Yeah. I've noticed that too, where it's like it's one thing when you're playing the game, but then you're watching like a stream or something, and I've definitely seen it happen. It definitely could be, our minds are just like that. We like seeing the patterns, so we don't like notice the times when it doesn't happen. We're just like primed for that, but who knows?
Who knows? Could all just be in our head. I had the summer vacation Dr. Ock appear 4 times in the last week in my shop.
Oh yeah.
It's funny too because if it was 700, I probably would buy it because I like that he's holding like a coconut with a little umbrella in it, But you think chance does happen, right? I mean, some people haven't pulled a Series 5 card, and they've hit collection level 8,000. Other people have pulled 4 or 5. 5? Is it 5? How many have you gotten zombies?
Oh,
a lot.
More than you. More than you, the viewer.
I think it was either 4 or 5. It was Thanos, Shuri, Knull, Master Mold, and I feel like I might be forgetting one in between there. It came out between Shuri and Thanos, Shuri, Master Mold, Knull. It came out between Knull and Master Mold. I feel like there might have been one. It was at least 4. I know those 4 for sure.
You're one ahead of me, so you've gotten 4 because I've gotten 3.
All right, then it's 4. I didn't think I got 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I take a little bit of a creative liberty to make a point. Things happen in your favor, in one's favor. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah, sometimes like 20K. The guy who I think actually ran to the end of the collection track, I don't think ever pulled a natural Series 5.
Damn.
Which blew my mind. Like, damn, what a way to just like, it feels like you're just flipping the bird to this guy who's like setting like, that GIF, it's like the Fairly Odd Parents, they're shoveling the money into the generator and it's all going on fire. It's like I can't imagine putting like as much money into where, and I'm like a high collection level, I'm like 11K or something, but like 20K, like being like almost double that in. I can't imagine. And I'd be so mad. Like I feel like along the way I would just lose. I don't know. I'd have a hard time like keeping going with it if I just never pulled the Series 5. Like it feels so bad.
Yeah.
Well,
Series 5 sucks. Big bads suck. It's probably a good segue into our next topic where we're going to touch upon some of these themes. But
I love oh, there it is. Yeah, look,
there it is.
just
Yeah.
shoveling the money into the fire, and that's what that's like. Yeah. I mean, I felt that way when I spent a bit of money to, when the token shop update happened. There was a bonus if you hit 3K collection level, and I was like, this is kind of a big bonus because it made your starting tokens. What it was. You got 1,000 for just getting into pool 3. If your collection level 1,000, you got or no, what was it? Was it 3,000? I think it was 3,000. Then 1,000 collection level, you got 6,000 tokens. But if you were 3,000 collection level, you got 12K tokens. Yeah. And this is just when we got tokens, so like we didn't know how we were gonna get them, and they were and still are. But they were even more expensive then because we didn't have some of the cheaper things like the Token Tuesday. So I was just like, I want to get 3K. So I did a lot of what the guys in the GIF are doing, and just threw some money in the fire to finish that pool 3 collection. And man, let me say, spending like direct money on like progression outside of bundles feels so incredibly bad. Like it's very expensive for not very much progress. Even when you're in pool 3, like you're still getting cards then, but like it is very slow.
It's like those gachas when the banner's gonna expire in a day. You need to get the character drops, so you just dump all kinds of money in just to guarantee that you get it before it goes away. It's almost like this is modeled after a gacha game.
No.
And I see that Ivan Tao Artist Showcase on there, Nate. Is that something that you're going to be purchasing with some money?
I'll tell you what.
They all look great.
I get very few variants, but the ones that I love are the Venom ones and the Knull ones. So and these in particular, like I don't even like these. Well, Sif was actually a really good card, especially in the discard.
They both are solid cards.
Thor
is
they're in very
specific decks, right? Like Thor, it's like one main Thor deck and like one or two main Sif decks.
But like the art is so good on really these as well, and like and I have 2 Knull variants in my shop right now: the Spider Woman and Storm. Both in my shop tonight.
The nullified ones. Yeah. Oh, they look really good. I have the Storm one and I love it. And I know you got the Daredevil one recently too, right?
Yeah, I got it this past week, and
good one.
It's just like it's like be careful what you ask for, because like I really was wanting something along these lines. I really want the House of X or whatever Professor X one, but
I love that one. It's a good one.
But I was wanting some nullified variants, and these both popped up at the same time. Like, oh my god, it's so expensive. Like
5,000 is. Man, just be thankful that you're a U.S. citizen, meaning that you have U.S. dollars, because 5,000 gold's even more expensive for us Canucks.
It's not a cheap bundle. And you know what's funny? So I actually had like a little snafu where I've been doing like the little bundle videos because some people seem to like them. Just quick, like, hey, this is what the bundle is, a little value breakdown, and is this worth it? Is it not worth it relative to the game economy? So I pre-recorded the Ivan Tao one, and it actually changed. Like, it used to be even worse. In the old data mine, this was actually, it's still not good, but it was actually significantly worse. The old one, it was still 5,000. But it was 1,500 credits and nothing else. It was, well, the variants obviously, but like they just slashed the credits in half, and then it seems like they updated it before it released. Because I went back and I was looking at it on stream the other day. I'm like, I feel like this feels different, and I looked at the unreleased video, and it was different. It did actually change. So I guess that goes to show not everything that is data mined is necessarily finalized. I mean, it doesn't make the value better. Like it's still a bad value, but it's not quite as insulting. Because I was kind of insulted seeing the 1,500. It's like you're really gonna charge 5K gold is like what's the conversion? That's gotta be like $60 or $70.
Yeah,
or
because
something.
you have to buy. I mean, it's essentially you have to buy the like $100 bundle, right?
Yeah, so I mean, well, that's the cost efficient way to do it, right? And that's what a lot of people who spend a lot are probably going to end up doing. Because like, why pay more and whatever? But it was like, I was like, you really have this bundle this expensive, and you couldn't even give people enough credits to split both cards. I kind of went off about it. And it's funny because I noticed I had to record a whole little other video. I forgot to delist it. So they both went live at like the same time, but they're like different because one is the smaller value, one's the other one. So I noticed that. That's why I was like frantically like tabbing at the start of the show, is because I noticed that. Um, oh yeah, and that's another thing. I don't want to go on a tangent, but like, so there's a hot location, right? We didn't have any information. There was all this information that wasn't data mined this time. And one of those things was the hot load and featured locations. Normally we know those a while in advance because of the data mines. And like we just didn't have it because I wanted to do a deck video for like the hot location. It's just like, well, I can't really do that because I don't know what it is. They didn't tell us any of that stuff. So that's something I'd love them to communicate more in the future. Is like give us like a little location calendar. It's like it's not like it hurts anything knowing when something's coming out. But I digress.
Anyways, yeah, sorry, didn't mean to go on a tangent, but I was
That's
waiting.
all right.
I was waiting for these, and like, oh god,
It is
like,
beautiful art. It's really like although I will say if you do have some gold, if you have 2K gold, like I have 2K right now, there's a Rocket Raccoon bundle for real money that comes with 3,000 gold that's better than like the $100 gold thing in terms of value. It's smaller, but you get like 3K gold. So that's what I'm waiting for.
How
Is
much
that
is
comes
that?
out on Tuesday. It's $30, I believe,
So
for
it'll be
3K
like
gold.
$40.
I think it gives you like it
Yeah, I
gives you
get that.
some credits and a cool Rocket Raccoon. So that's what I'm doing. Like I have 2K gold. I don't feel like buying a bunch of gold to buy this. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna wait for because that comes out I think on Tuesday or
Oh, and
Monday
that'll
or
give you enough
Tuesday.
gold to pick
Yeah,
this
so
up.
that'll give me the
Yeah.
gold to get across the finish line, and because I'm trying to cut back a bit because I spent a lot on variants and I like all the variants I have, and I'm not trying to needlessly spend more. But this is an exception because this is my favorite Thor in the game. I love the Venom ones. I really love the nullified Thor, but then I saw this, and this was like months before this bundle was announced or whatever. I was like, that's it. That's the Thor for me. That's like my favorite one. I like
yeah,
it better than the nullified. It's just great, and the Sif's great too. They're both really cool, and I'd love to have like a full Venomized deck someday. So
same.
this is hopefully kind of pushing me closer to that. So although I tell people like the only people who are buying this, you're buying this for the art. The credits
Hmm.
are thrown in as a bonus, and they're charging a premium for the art here.
Yeah.
So don't buy this if you are looking for value. Wait, there are way better things you can buy for less money than this.
Yeah, I think they're nice, but I'm generally not into the kind of the
The
ultra freaky, like kind of
Mhm.
scary looking things. So although I mean they're nice to look at, but I'll be passing. Yeah. So moving on. A little bit of a warning. So we talked about all the things we liked at the beginning. There's going to be some things we like going on right now, but May 16th,
I love this.
Second Dinner released their big monthly Marvel Snap patch, and there were some surprises. That's an understatement. And some of those surprises were good, but it's fair to say that some things were not so good. So a little bit of a trigger warning here. We are passionate about Marvel Snap. Zombies here, that's his full-time job, making Marvel Snap content. So part of this passion that we have is praising the good, like the OTA updates or the variants we like, but also, calling out the bad. So if you don't want to hear us calling out the bad, even though we believe it's warranted and constructive, you may want to hit the mute button or maybe like put your fingers in your ears and count to 50 or 50,000 since we're probably going to go
For
on at
50
length.
minutes, yeah.
But it's just fair warning. Fun fact about the graphic on screen here. I Googled constructive criticism and got taken to a business website that unironically posted this in 2019. the compliment sandwich, or as I like to call it, the compliment hamburger sandwich. I thought this was a joke from Family Guy from 15 years ago, and it was, but they kind of made a serious thing out of it. So if you're a people leader in your organization, you know who you are out there. Don't ever do this. Have respect for your team members. Don't give them the compliment sandwich. Just be genuine with them. This is not genuine. But the graphic is hilarious, and I want to credit Brooks and Kirk for making me smile. All right, so let's go through the patch. There's a lot that was included with it. I think the first is a highlight and a good thing. So we'll start on a positive note. Kitty Pryde returned to Marvel Snap with a brand new ability. And basically it was the rework where Kitty Pryde basically bounces back to your hand every turn. There's no funky mechanics with it. You play it, start of your turn, it comes back, gets extra power, and they gave it to everyone, which is really, really cool. Especially because
Oh, I just had. Can you tell me how does that interact with cards that nuke, like say Killmonger, for example?
Yeah, so the way it works is, so you play Kitty Pryde on your turn, like you play any card, and then it flips like it would based on priority, like any other card. So if you have priority and you flip first and your opponent kills Mongers, Kitty Pryde dies. If you don't have priority, then Killmonger will flip first, then Kitty will flip, and Kitty will live. At the start of your next turn, before priority is calculated, very important, Kitty returns to your hand and gains +2.
Cool.
That's how it
works.
works.
Okay. I appreciate that, because I've been seeing a lot of Kitty Pryde decks, and it's like, oh, okay, how do I beat this?
It's kind of a cool experiment, right? Because for the most part, the card that we see everyone like flock to and try out during a given month is like the new season pass card, right? But that's only people who are buying the pass. Kitty's kind of neat because she is a card that just, if you had been playing the game, you just have it now. So we kind of get a little peek at what it would be like if they release like a free new card. Like it's interesting to see how much of an impact that has, because there's just no barrier to entry for like everyone.
Sun's
just
still
has
shining,
it.
Sky's still blue, water still tastes good. Anyways, gatekeeping is not a good thing, and I think the Kitty Pryde release shows that. Some of us are worried that maybe Kitty lost a little something with her rework, a little less nuanced, and that's true, but still a really powerful card. Later on, we're going to be doing a little bit of a meta overview, and Kitty Pryde decks are good. Bottom line, and she fits into a couple different archetypes, and just a fun card. Still a lot of fun to play with, and really happy to see it come back. The whole saga was a roller coaster of emotions, but to Second Dinner's credits, I think they did right by everyone here. Good on them. There's that narrow segment of the population that couldn't get Kitty Pryde on time, that wanted to buy her, and then they didn't get the tokens, and that's, there's always going to be a group that aren't happy, but hopefully bygones are bygones. We're happy to have this card. We'll give that a win. Thumbs up. Yeah. Moving on, another feature that was introduced. This one's kind of, we'll say,
a little controversial.
It's controversial. I think that the idea was there, the intent was good.
Yeah.
Good intentions. Yeah. Perhaps the execution left something to be desired. So, Nate, why don't you take us through the change, Nate?
Are you talking about this?
Why this one was a swing and a miss?
the deck cosmetics customization. Yeah, this is interesting. So, you can customize your cosmetics per deck now. So, meaning you can have a different avatar, different card back, different title for each deck that you have. I don't know. There's a note here. It says the first time you log in this patch, your active deck will be changed to the first deck in your list. We apologize for this inconvenience. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think
anyone would have even noticed that if they didn't say that.
So here's the problem. Like, I like the idea. Like, you can have a custom card back and a custom avatar for every deck. That's cool. Except when you build a deck now, it forces you to pick an avatar and a card back in the most rigid
you need
way.
A default. You need
yeah.
A default. Like it defaulted all your old decks to whatever you had, but now anytime you make a new deck, I don't know if it imports them. I imagine it doesn't, but it just starts with a blank avatar and no title and no card back. And I didn't mind changing the card back when I made a new deck, but now it's a whole list of things to do. And the other thing that was really annoying is it's not bad on PC, But oh my god, if you're a person like me who struggles to delete decks and always has like a full list, when you're scrolling through on mobile, it takes forever to get to your. If you have one deck on all the way on the left and you have
Because the
another deck, it
carousel.
sounds dumb, but yeah, it's slow now. Before you could just like whip through it because it
Yeah,
would show you
yeah.
like 5 decks at a time. Now it shows you like three at a time, and you have to like tap and tap and tap, and it's
You
a
know,
really minor thing, and I bet they're probably gonna. I think they're gonna realize like, oh yeah,
yeah.
this was a little oversight. We'll probably make this smoother.
You know what this
But
reminds me
it's
of?
funny to see.
This
What's
reminds
that?
me of that change they made to Thanos, the first one, where it put the stones in your deck one by one, like, and it felt like it took 20 years, and it was
Oh
like,
my god, I'm
that was a
so glad
cool
they hot
idea,
fixed that
guys.
quickly.
Yeah,
It
I
was
think that
so bad. It,
this
it took
feels
so
like
much
that.
time. I
You,
stopped
you know,
playing Thanos because it was taking so much time. Luckily, they fixed it in
so
like a day, but
do you
like,
remember how I was talking before the stream started that there's two kinds of software developers,
mhm.
hacks and people who over engineer things?
Yeah.
This is a little bit of over engineering. Like they thought about it in a very like linear programmatic way, and they didn't really take into account the user experience. Having defaults and not forcing you in there would be a good trade-off. As for the carousel thing, like I mean it's they did that to show you the avatar, but good grief.
They just need to speed up. It's like I don't care if it's more zoomed in so you can see it better. It's just a very. It doesn't let you. I can't like flick scroll it. It's like you have to just tap and do it over, and it's so slow. It goes like one by one, and it's funny though because I this was actually a feature I really wanted them to do
Oh yeah.
because I have like a million titles and avatars and I don't use them. Like, oh, I got a cool new one from a bundle. I'll use that for a week or something, but then I just go back to the same one I normally like. But I love doing like themed decks. So the fact that I can like put Gamora on the Guardians deck or whatever, like I and then like the Kitty deck, I have the Kitty avatar with the X-Men card back, and my title says something about cats. It's like I think that's fun. So I love this change. They just need to iron out the
They need to make it not suck.
they just need to take away. It's like you said. It's like it's a very. I feel like definitely was a technical mind that went into
Yeah.
this instead of like the UI focused stuff. And I think they'll probably pretty quickly realize it, and
Yeah.
hopefully they can just make some slight changes, and then we get the best of both worlds.
Okay, so going back to my compliment hamburger sandwich, if Kitty Pryde was the good and this
We're an out
change
of
was
order
the bad,
sandwich. Yeah.
well, unfortunately, the next change is the ugly because the bottom bun is has gone moldy or rotten to the core. I think that this is probably the change introduced in this patch that garnered the most attention, and rightfully so. So, Zombies, why don't you tell us what old Second Dinner did with the series drop this month? And before you do, sorry, we were having this conversation the day before the patch, and I was like, huh, it's funny that they didn't say what the downgrades are going to be because they usually announce them a few days before the patch. I wonder why they decided not to announce them ahead of time.
Like they
and
usually
and
do.
so what like they usually do. So this tells me that they knew this was not going to be particularly well received, and so no one can claim ignorance on this. Of course, I'm not specifying what, so I'll leave it to you to enlighten our listeners and viewers.
It's funny. I had the same kind of thing happen where I literally said, I think on like KM Best Discord or something, we were talking with people about the game. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of weird they didn't announce it. Some
So
people
it's
thought
your
it meant
fault.
they.
It's your fault. This is all Zombies' fault. Let the record be known.
Yep, it's my fault. I'm the one who deserves the hate. I literally said, I bet, or I didn't say I bet, but like I was like, I wonder if the reason they didn't tell us this is because they're enacting some change to the acquisition and series drop is going to be a little bit different.
True
I
story. I
basically said
saw this.
exactly that. And
He went back and he deleted it, but I saw it. So I don't
oh,
think
I think it's still there.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
still there. I'm just teasing.
People hit me with the eyes
Crap,
emoji.
crap,
It's like I didn't have
crap,
any
mega
inside
crap.
information. It was just like a guess, but it seems it was a well-founded guess because things did in fact change.
Well, actually,
And
so
Mhm.
you didn't have any inside information. So they do sometimes, under confidence, kind of give you advanced changes in the content creators Discord. So if you can't say, then don't. But I'm assuming that this was not revealed ahead of time in that forum either. They didn't solicit feedback on this,
No,
correct?
they this is feedback lists, and as far as I am aware, we haven't gotten to a point where they've been seeking super. I'm sure they listen to what people are saying, but we haven't gotten any special insight about like, oh, what do you guys think about this change? Like we're generally all as surprised as the changes as everyone else is. I mean, maybe there's some people that's an exception for if they like. I'm sure some people have some maybe connection to people at the company, but in terms of like general creator space, they're not giving us super secret info about these changes.
So I feel like we're pulling a Rachel Maddow right now, where we're dancing around the actual topic for like 20 minutes before we get to the point. And unfortunately, she does a great job of it. Probably us not so much. So what is the change that was so bad that has us all riled up right now?
So it was a series drop, right?
Yeah.
And the series drop we had been expecting, and it was so funny. Like I went on to the Forbidden Place, the subreddit. I like to kick back with popcorn sometimes because man, people get in the silliest arguments about video games, but it's amusing to watch from the sidelines. And this caused a lot of those arguments. And one thing I kept seeing like kind of touted. And basically they changed the series drop. So things before worked in a schedule. That's the relevancy here is there was a set schedule of when cards dropped. It took a while for us to fully figure it out because we saw cards go from 5 to 4, but it took a while for cards to go from 4 to 3. And I believe it was either March or April. I think it was April, but I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was the first time we saw cards that initially dropped from Series 5 all the way to 3. With Bast and Valkyrie and Super Scroll. So we finally had a timetable on how long it took. And people were really happy about this because we wanted to know. Because essentially what the argument was is if you're pool of 3 complete, when these cards fully rotate down, they're quote unquote free. Like you get them so quickly when you're pool of 3 complete that you don't have to really spend any money. You can just use your credits you get from your dailies and weeklies, and you'll open up the cards really fast once they're in Series 3 because you have all this other Series 3 cards. And now we have less certainty. And I saw some people were saying, oh, everyone made up this schedule. This schedule wasn't real. You guys, you were buying into it, but the company never said anything. And it was funny. I went and I looked at the post and they directly acknowledged, like, you may notice we're deviating from our previously set pattern. Like they acknowledged that there was a pattern and a set schedule in the post where they say, hey, we're changing this. And so that was just a little funny thing I found about it because it's so crazy to me that some people actually thought that they thought, no, we made up this pattern. It's not actually dropping at a set schedule. You're noticing things where there aren't. It's like, no, they were doing it in a set order. That's how we knew, oh, hey, this card's dropping to Series 4 next month or dropping to Series 3. And that's where a lot of the anger, I think, comes from here is because in the series drop, everyone was expecting 2 very prominent cards to drop. They were cards that released back in December, and they were very powerful cards, Darkhawk, as well as Knull. Knull sees a little bit less play, but very key in Galactus. And those are very heavily sought after meta powerful cards. And so the advice I was giving to people was we learned last drop, if you pin a card at Series 4 and it rotates down, you can actually buy it for 1,000 tokens still, as long as it was in your store before. So that was kind of the advice I was giving people was, oh, hey, you really want Knull or you want Darkhawk? Well, in like 2 weeks or a week or however long, it's going to drop. So you should just pin it. You wait a little bit longer. You've already waited all this time, and you'll get a lot better value while still getting the thing you want, right? And if you're a Series 3 complete, you didn't even need to pin it. You could just open it. But this is for mainly advice for the people who are still making their way through pool 3 to get the card a bit earlier on. And so that was like my advice. And then the day came and it didn't drop. And so we got different drops. So quickly, let's just say what dropped here. Cards dropping from 5 to 4 is Master Mold, Negasonic, and Nimrod. Series 4 to Series 3. This is where it gets interesting. Sentry, Silver Surfer, Dazzler, Shadow King, Sauron, and Ghost. You might notice this is more cards than we typically get rotating down. And
that's good, right?
You'd think. But a lot of these cards are actually the January cards, Surfer, Dazzler, the Zabu season. Surfer was December, but the other cards, Dazzler, Shadow King, this was the Sauron season, and or not Sauron, Zabu season, and then Ghost and Sauron were even more recent than that. Those were February. So the fact that they're dropping from 4 to 3 already, that's actually quicker. However, coincidentally, Darkhawk and Knull, the two cards on this list that are by far the most, meta relevant and sought after, are going to be taking a bit of a extended journey in Series 4.
Crap, mega crap.
For an undisputed amount of time, not permanently, worth noting. They said they don't have plans to make cards permanently Series 4, but at their discretion, some cards will be staying in Series 4 longer. And I think we can't really mention this part of the change without mentioning another part of the change, which is very relevant to this. And that is not all cards are going to be releasing at Series 5 anymore. And this is a change we're going to be seeing start next month in the June season. They have said they haven't given much information, but they basically said in this update, 2 cards releasing in June are going to start in Series 4 instead of Series 5. Now, this is what really gets me. Like, this is a really big win. This is what people have been asking for quite some time. And if they didn't try and compliment sandwich us here, which is what it kind of feels like, if they didn't because they knew people had expectations for Darkhawk and Knull because it was following the pattern, and I refuse to believe they didn't know that there was going to be a negative backlash to the fact that these 2 cards weren't dropping.
They're the good cards. That's the thing. Like, if they put it, I don't know. It's crazy. Like that. By the way, this explains why I packed both Sauron and Dazzler this past week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why you got 2 cards, is because they dropped down and they became better. But yeah, to your point, you're 100% right. These are the sought after cards, and it's what it feels like is happening here. Is they're saying, hey, we are willing to sell you some new cards cheaper, or in some cases even drop cards faster. However, it feels like they're trying to recoup some of the lost potential from all right, well, we're not making 6K in dollars from 6K tokens in dollars from every card release anymore. So we've got to make up for that somehow. So let's make some of these cards stay in Pool 4 longer, and then more people will pay 3K for them, which Pool 4 is a lot more accessible than Pool 3, or Pool 5. But the thing that really rubs people the wrong way, and they have a comment in the thing that really, I think, hammered home the concerns, because it's basically like you said, it's like these are the good cards, and they don't have a new set rotation plan. They're basically like, we're gonna do it at our discretion, and then it's like, oh, do they not realize that they're selectively picking the better cards to be more expensive? And then they mention,
of course they do,
offhandedly, they're like, all right, well, some months we might not even do a series drop if the meta looks healthy. And I'm just like, what the Murgle does that mean, man? Like, that's crazy. How do you determine you have a healthy meta if most people don't have the cards? It's so strange. It's like it really is. I think there is good intention in what they're trying to do. Cards generally less expensive is a very good thing, but I think timing these together was really not good, because it's really scary when the metagame shouldn't be determined by people's wallets, and that's what people got so mad about with Nexus events, right? So when you're selectively keeping the good cards expensive, it just reeks of a pay to win mentality, and it just feels icky. And I'm not a person who is directly affected by these changes. In fact, I benefit purely from these changes because they're making new releases cheaper, and I already have the cards that they're sticking longer in Pool 4. So from a personal perspective, I'm out ahead here. But I still feel really kind of gross. That line, I don't know how they thought that was a good idea to put that in there. That was it just gave me Nexus event flashbacks.
I don't think they thought it out too much. But I think what's interesting about all this is that it's bad. There's no look. You're gonna have people that are gonna try to rationalize this, but at best it's gatekeeping, and at worst it's something more icky. But I think that unlike Nexus events, they can get away with this. So I have a couple friends who play Marvel Snap casually. They're Series 3s, they stuck with it, but they play on their phone. They don't watch streamers. If they consume any content, it's the odd YouTube video. And I asked them, I sent you some screenshots of our chat. I asked them, like, hey, what do you think of these changes to the game economy and card acquisition in general? And they basically were like, well, I wish I could get cards a little faster, but whatever. They give more tokens now than they used to, so that's pretty cool. I'm like, what about the drops from Series 3 to Series 4? It's like, I don't really understand how that all works, so I just buy the cards I want that I can afford. So it's almost like in Hearthstone, we always used to say, like, oh, the less engaged players don't care about this, and that wasn't always true. I think in this case, for some, it might be, which doesn't make it okay. It doesn't excuse it, but it might explain it. Even a more engaged.
It depends where you're on with the game too, though, right? Like I feel like that's a super easy thing to miss when you're in that really long trench of pool 3. But I think it becomes much more apparent when you're finally done with that, right? Because your card acquisition dries up so much that I think people start looking up the drops or whatever. Maybe people don't, but that's just kind of what comes to my mind with it, right? Because like I feel like a lot of the player base probably wasn't as like, oh, what's in what pool when they're in pool 3. They're just kind of trying to get their cards, right? That's what your friends sounded like too when the message. It was kind of cool to see a more like removed perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems to me that I don't really understand the motivation. I always want to assume the best. It's really hard in this case to do so.
Oh, I think it's easy to understand if, like, from their perspective, I get what they're doing, and I don't think it's like I think they made some missteps that makes it feel much more nefarious because they particularly are focusing on power. And I think if they gave people like a set amount of time, people would feel a lot less concerned. Like one of my biggest like things against this is in the blog post, they said they want people to buy. The whole goal of this and some other changes that I don't think they've added yet, but are coming in the next patch, are to incentivize people to buy more new cards, right? They straight up said, hey, not enough people are getting the new cards. We want new card releases to be exciting. We're trying to make changes to make that better, which, I mean, we've been asking them to do that for like 6 months, ever since Pool 5 came out. So it's like, yes, good, feedback heard. And it feels like they're shifting from a model of cards being insanely expensive on release to like mediumly expensive to much cheaper / free depending on where you're at in the game.
I'll tell you what,
it feels like they're changing from that to like less super high price on release cards, but they're going to get more out of that middle pool. It feels like they're kind of shifting because I mean, I don't know their financials, but I imagine the intent here is they don't want to, if they're already making a lot of money doing this, they're trying to be careful in changing it because they don't want to kill the cash cow.
I'll tell you what, if they there's new cards out that I haven't bought because I'm saving my tokens for like the Spider-Verse cards, but I would love to play with Stegron. I would love to play with Howard the Duck, but there's no chance in hell that I'm paying 6,000 for either of those, right?
Yeah.
And they're not like good cards, or at least they're not meta cards, but they might be fun, but they're like, what a missed opportunity. Like if they cost 2,000 tokens, like I'd spend it. But at 6,
I think that's what they're doing with these like 3,000 ones. It's like more, I think they've realized like 3,000 is kind of like not a crazy amount for most people, whereas 6,000 is just like, it feels like so much. Like it feels like more than double to me when I'm thinking about like a 6,000 token purchase. It just feels like a lot more.
It is a ton, especially because the price point of the game is so much that you have to really be stingy about what you spend your tokens on, and there's not a good way to acquire them.
People get anxiety about it, right? Like that's one of the most common things I see is people don't like with the current system, and this was under a known system, right? This is with a system where we know when everything's dropping. People still would get anxious about, I don't know, should I spend my tokens now? Should I buy them right as soon as they drop, and then I'll get my value for 3K before they drop down? And now it's like those people are going to have such a worse time. Like, yes, maybe you're going to earn slightly more tokens. We don't know the amount, but they have talked about one of the incentives, which is, if you buy a new card, you'll get these quests that apparently you can do, play with the new card, and you get some more tokens. Kind of like a rebate, right? You get some token kickback. And we don't know any numbers, so I haven't really judged that too much yet because it's kind of impossible to judge it until we see what the numbers on that are. But in concept, it's a neat idea, right? Like it shows they're trying to incentivize people to buy cards. But this change in the lack of security and knowing when a card's going to drop or how long it's going to take, I think it's going to make people even more scarce with their tokens, because people aren't going to know, man, if I buy Howard the Duck today, what if he's a card they just insta drop to Series 3? Because that's something they said they can do. And it's just like, it makes people even more insecure about, like, is it worth buying this card at Series 4? I don't know when it's going to rotate. I have no idea. If it ends up being a good card, maybe I assume it isn't going to rotate faster and I buy it. But it's just like, it's the lack of consistency, I think, is going to add a lot more anxiety to people's decision making. It's going to make decisions harder. And I think you're actually going to get more people hoarding tokens than before, which is like the opposite.
Yep. Well, like we all got tagged in a Twitter poll earlier today, I think it was, or yesterday. It says, I only have 6,000 tokens. Which card should I prioritize? Jeff the Shark or Iron Lad? And like, it was a very quick, like Jeff. But the poll, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at it now, 220 votes, 63% Jeff, 37% Iron Lad. But like, it kind of sucks that we're in that place, right? Like, I really kind of want both of these cards, but I can only get one. Which one should I get? And you get that anxiety, and then you get people with like that. You don't want to have your regret purchase, right? And
regret purchases are really, really rough in this game, especially if you're like a free to play or pass only. If you're getting, that one Series 5 or 2 Series 4s a month, you feel it when you make a poor decision that you don't end up liking. Like, I think a lot of people, we saw that with Kang a lot, because people justified him because he was never dropping. And man, not only did the hype die for that card, but I saw, and I know Blue feels this way, I saw so much regret from people buying Kang. It's like the one card I regret purchasing, because even though it didn't drop, I just don't use it.
Yeah. Well, and like, okay, so
and I bought Ghost.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Didn't regret Ghost.
Ghost was in my Series 3 shop this week. I picked it as my free card. So,
nice.
So my kid has Galactus pinned, and he doesn't spend any money on the game. He started getting the season pass for the card, but he's got Galactus pinned, and at that, like, when you don't have a full Series 3 collection, talk about slow to get tokens. Like, it's going to take a year, or 6 months or something to get enough tokens to get the one card, which is insane. But anyways,
it should be a bit better now since they changed it, right? Because they don't just get the 100 token drops anymore. But when it was like that, it was crazy how long it took. You got literally like 1,000 tokens a month or something. So it still takes a while.
It was pretty slow.
Better. Yeah. So it may be, I don't know the exact rate. I don't know what it breaks down to, but you should probably get it in the next, I'd imagine, month. But
yeah,
again, I don't know the exact numbers.
So I want to address something about this. We talked about the timing, the communication, what's happened. So in our chat, Binks wrote, I feel from a business perspective, ambiguity is sometimes the profitable choice. So
probably true.
Let me explain what I think that means, or what it means to me, and then I'll share my opinion as to where that can have diminishing returns. So the ambiguity here is when things drop and what will drop and at what cadence. So we don't know. Ghost could drop before Darkhawk because we're not committing to anything. We can change our mind at any time because, again, we're not committing to anything. There's no rule set. There's no, they can decide that the meta is fine. So they don't want to drop it. Like the expense of it influences the state of the meta because Thanos wasn't every second game you played in the month of March. Okay. So here's where I think that is probably a little bit of a fallacy. And to be fair, I'm not directing this at Binks because a lot of people think this way. If I'm non-committal, then it gives me the flexibility to operate any which way. The problem here is that the lack of communication and the lack of transparency in how you're going to conduct yourself creates a loss of confidence and diminishes your reputation amongst your customer base, which unfortunately in this industry is everything. There is something to be said about instilling confidence, and if you look at what happened with Kitty Pryde, you know, that's a good example of, okay, we made a mistake, so we're going to do this thing as almost a write-off, you know, to instill confidence and buy ourselves some goodwill. The thing that strikes me as crazy is that all this happened at the same time. Yeah. So with all the goodwill that they could have, celebrating that everyone got this really cool, powerful, and meta card, by the way, is completely overshadowed and eclipsed by
I've seen so few people
drop.
talking about it, and that's what's such a shame, because I think the reason these came together is because one is trying to supplement the other. Or I think that's why, from a business perspective, they're trying to do that. But it would have been this would have, I think, I think they could have done almost the same thing, but if they made one slight change, you know, all they had to do to make this a total either win or not a net loss, if they wanted to go this way, they should have done it after this rotation. They should have let the rotation play out, so there's not this big cloud of distrust from people had expectations. They knew people had expectations because they directly referenced the release schedule and how it was a consistent thing. And they kind of decided to not say anything, which, again, doesn't help with managing expectations, right? Because when, you know, you don't say anything, people just assume it's business as usual. Things are going to be as they have been before, because otherwise they'd expect you to say something. So I think they could have actually had their cake and eaten it too here. All they had to do was just not drop, just do the normal drop this month and say, hey, going forward, we might have cards stay in Series 4 longer. However, we're going to start some cards in Series 4. I think if
it would have been fine if they didn't.
People would have been. I'd say people would be happy. I'd say there would be almost zero if they did the wording about, hey, we might skip a drop. Maybe there's some concern still, but I think you could have totally flipped the script and had this just be an absolute W, and you just bite the bullet and say, all right, yes, well, maybe we'll miss out on some of those 3K token purchases for these two cards, but the potential goodwill that brings with the game will pay for itself. Because I definitely felt how Blue is describing, where even though I'm not directly affected, it really rubbed me the wrong way, and it made me feel less good about directly supporting the game with money, because I don't want to feel like I'm reinforcing a decision I really am kind of disliking and concerned about. And so that has an impact, even though the actual change doesn't really impact me very much at all, on a personal level. So it's definitely, it's just such a shame, because it would have been so easy. It's just tweak that, just make the drop normal this month and say it's changing starting next month. Give people set expectations rather than just try and change them at the last minute. And I think you'd see a lot less backlash. I think people would be very happy about this patch, and all the focus would be, oh, hey, I can actually get 2 cards next month instead. People would be super happy about that when they've only been getting a card a month. So it really does feel like kind of they could have packaged this in a way to where the community would probably have been a lot happier about it without actually drastically changing things, if this is what they wanted to do. It's just a small change like that, I think, would have gone a long way to not necessarily build trust, but it doesn't create all this distrust, which has been a common point I've seen from a lot of people saying it's just because when they do something like this and then the result is we're dropping at our own convenience, you just built some distrust, and now you're saying, trust us, bro. We'll drop it when we feel like it.
So I think that, so then you can only really derive 2 conclusions from this, right? There's a left-hand, right-hand situation, which I find unlikely, like you would think that in a company like Blizzard, which is huge and have different departments, they don't communicate. This is a small team, small group. I think that it's just calculated on their end because they're like, look, we're gonna do this. We're gonna eat the shit for it from our engaged player base, but like most people won't even realize it or care. And I think that this is the real test, right? It's not going to be whether you zombies or Nate or anyone watching this or listening really is happy or unhappy or otherwise. It's going to be the behaviors of the people who don't engage in content like this, who aren't highly engaged, that will really determine what they're going to do about this. And unfortunately, based on my very limited sample size, I am not super confident. I think you mentioned this earlier, that if this had happened during the beta, then it would have probably gone very differently because of the types of people that were engaged with the product at that time has changed significantly.
Players, right? Like that. Yeah. I did a whole thread about it earlier today, and the short version of it was like, I do wonder how something like this would have gone over in beta, because beta, I think the whole reason we were successful in not having Nexus events stick around, which was kind of their gacha new card system that they were initially going to implement as a way to get new cards into the game. It didn't stick around because there was obviously huge backlash, but part of the reason there was so much backlash was because most of the player base was card game players. So like, card game players have a kind of set expectation from playing other card games. And yeah, this game is different in some ways, but card game players, as much as they, rip open packs, it turns out they're not the biggest fans of gacha gaming, believe it or not. And especially when gacha elements can influence competitive play and being able to build a good deck, it's a pretty big turnoff for a lot of card game players when you have to rely on an RNG element to get access to a game piece to play a competitive deck. That's a pretty big red flag for a lot of people. And so there was the whole controversy, and they ended up changing it and reversing it. And while this is not as big of a thing as Nexus events were, I think it is a fairly big thing, but I think the percentage of the player base that's like very involved and cares about this, like we do, is probably a very, very small percent of the player base. And then we have that bit of anecdotal evidence from Blue talking to some of his less engaged friends. I know people who are like kind of in that same boat. And I really do think that, especially with the strength of the IP, they don't really have to cater to the veteran card game players who want things like not to be this way, because I think they're just we are vastly outnumbered by people who just play this as a fun little game on their phone and don't think twice about it. And so I think it's easier to like be they don't have to like go out of their way to change. And I mean, maybe they will, and I hope they do make it better. I'm sure probably will make it better over time, but this is a kind of a rough jumping off point, and we've seen all this criticism stuff, but it makes you wonder how much of the player base even knows this is happening. And I think it's actually a very small amount in the grand scheme of things. So it's hard to get, upset about something that you don't even know is happening or exists.
Someone was asking us to take bets on the new Spider-Man cards coming out.
It's $20.99. That's my bet. Although I do want to bring, it's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but someone brought it up to me as a possibility, and I thought it was the funniest thing because it's going to be hilarious if it did happen. They said technically Nebula is a Series 5 release next month, right? Like she launches in the past, then goes to Series 5. By the way they worded it, technically it's possible that Nebula could be the card they put in Series 4 right away. Now, I don't think they're going to do that because they would run the risk of undermining like confidence in the people who are buying the pass, and that seems like a risky thing to do. So I don't think they're going to do that. But man, it would make for a really amusing thing if it happened, because you would see a huge divide in the community, because I think the free-to-play people would be thrilled because they get this powerful pass card sooner. And then the past people would probably be kind of pissed because they've had the card and they were hoping, the actual, new cards that we're releasing were one of the things they could buy for cheaper.
That kills me. Like, oh, I don't want more people to have the thing. That makes me mad. It's like, It's
Yeah.
like the same
Well, no,
rationale.
I think it's more about the fact
I
that
know.
not that more people are getting it for cheap, more so people wanting to get one of the other new cards for cheaper instead and being annoyed that Nebula is taking up like one of those two spots, right? That's kind of what I mean with that, because like they said 2 cards released next month, they're going to release right into Series 4.
Well,
instead
check
of
this
5.
out. So there's an article on Marvel Snap Zone from this week, right? It was just a couple of days ago, from the 17th, or at least that's when it was updated, with the release drop. And I know it's approximate, but here they've got all 4 of the Spider-Man cards in Series 4. Like, I mean, there's no way that's happening, right?
They're speculating. They don't know.
They came out and said, like, I know Kirilas does the graphs and they do a great job, but I remember they brought up like concerns about this too, because like they made this whole graph and a lot of people find it very useful. I know I do. And now there's not really going to be a way to graph this unless they go out of their way at a certain time to tell us what's dropping when in advance. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. We no longer have a system like this, whereas before it was like clockwork. You knew, and you know what my like.
Oh no, they do have them in Series 5 here. My bad. It says June in Series 5, and then they put them in. Yeah, okay.
This is operating off the old road.
They really don't know though. Yeah.
No, this is old. This is outdated because the cards dropping in June, 2 of the cards are not going to be in Series 5. They're going to start in 4. So we know that. So it's going to already be different, and that's going to change. It's unfortunate because like I like these graphs a lot, but unless they tell us ahead of time, we're not going to be able to make use of them anymore because we just don't know when the cards are dropping.
So if you had to guess which card would be in which pool, what would you guess?
So I said my piece about Nebula. I don't think they're going to do it, but man, would it be a funny moment if they did, because the community, I think, would be really split on that as a decision. But they're not going to do it because it would risk people like not feeling like they don't have to buy the pass as much, and I don't think they want that.
So they confirmed
for me, $20.99. I think he's going to be Series 5.
We know that Ghost Spider is the pass card,
yep.
Right? Okay. Okay. And then the other ones,
$20.99, Silk, and Nebula.
Okay.
The Series 5. What do you guys think? What's your guess on what's going to be? Because it's only going to be Nebula, I think.
Which is the good card, right?
Yeah, right. That's how I'm looking at it
these
now.
cards are very hard to evaluate. Like Spider-Man 2099 might be like completely bonkers busted, or might be just a giga dud. It's so hard to say.
I know.
He's a 2/6 now, isn't he? Too. I think.
Yeah, Silk
or 4/6, not 2/6.
Yeah, I knew you meant 4/6, but it's good you clarified for everyone else. Silk is a 2/5. It's premium stats, but very unwildly. Spider-Ham feels like Leech Light, but also is incredibly easy to slot in. I have no clue, and honestly, I don't even want to speculate, because like you try to like speculate based on your past experience and logic, and clearly they just showed that like get ready to note the time 1:42:59. They just do whatever
snap
they want. They have no. I'm sorry. I said 1:42:59, so there you go. They do what they want, and they don't care, and there's just no regard for consistency. They're going to be ambiguous about it, and they're going to see how far they can get away with it.
And not a bug.
and based on my very limited anecdotal feedback, I think that's going to continue to happen. So I'm basically just I'm not even going to try to speculate, because like they have a better idea of what's going to be good or not good, or maybe they don't. And it's clear that they're making the decisions based on what they think is going to be popular. Darkhawk and Knull, popular. Therefore,
they don't have to base those on what they think is popular. Like they have data on those.
Well, and their power level is really high too. It's not necessarily the popular. I mean, part of it, but you
know what I saw was the joke about it. It was, they're gonna leave them in pool 4 until they can figure out how to nerf them like Shuri.
Yeah.
And then
so I don't even. That's why everyone's like, "Oh, high Evo's a 4/4."
I'm saying it in jest, but like
I know, but like people are like, "It's gonna be bad now," and it's like, "Oh, okay, it's gonna be bad, but it's a big bad, so it's not gonna be that bad for long. They'll OTA it to 4/5 or 4/6 or whatever, and they'll push it." So I don't know.
So I worked for the court system for a long time, and it was a neat thing, right? When I was in law school, and we were like doing jury trials every day, and I was talking to the judge, and we'd watch it like just trial after trial after trial, and I remember asking him like, oh, what do you think that the jury's going to do? How do you think they're going to go on this one? And I'll never forget, he goes, you can't predict it. It's voodoo science is what he called it. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, it doesn't matter. You could think one way and you could have the most logical rationale for the way that it should be, and you still can't predict what they're going to do. It's like, it's like close your eyes and throw a dart sometimes, because you can't predict it. And so I don't know. I mean, if I had to guess, like, they take Spider-Man and make him the expensive one, because like that's the one that looks like it has a powerful effect. But like, we don't even know if the card's going to be good or not, right? Yeah.
They might though. They play test.
It's kind of. I mean, it's kind of like Gambit, sort of, except you can get Gambit to trigger multiple times later.
And it's a 6-power body.
But like, it's it is kind of big, But it's like is the whole Spider-Man archetype, like, it's a whole move sort of thing, and like it could flop. I don't know. And it
definitely could.
I have a lot of like I've got a bunch of tokens that I've been saving up, like, just for these cards, because I want to have a Spider-Man move deck with Ghost Spider and Silk and 2099, and it's like. Mm-hmm. I have like major token anxiety over this, because like it's gonna be like all my tokens, right, to get these cards, and then what if it sucks, right?
Yeah, you're gonna be playing your shiny new Spider-Man move deck, and I'm still gonna be throwing stones into Lockjaw. I'm gonna be that guy.
I know. No, it's cool. It's cool.
You could throw your Silk into Lockjaw.
Yeah, I guess so. So I don't know. It kind of leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. The whole thing feels very deliberate.
So it's not happening by accident, right? Like, I think it's a shame, because it frustrates me as not just a player, but like someone who sees like all these different gaming companies do stuff like this, and it's like, it really wouldn't have. You really, like, they didn't have to actually change what was happening here much at all, and it really just shows how you say the message is often as important as what the actual content is, because delivering it in this compliment sandwich fashion didn't seem to go over so well, when the compliments are kind of falling by the wayside, and everyone is distracted by the not so compliment, because people had expectations about the cards dropping. They knew people had expectations about the cards dropping. And they just kind of said, like, all right, well, oh well, like, deal with it. That's kind of what I felt like. We're not gonna try and it does amaze me, because I feel like even if they changed literally nothing, I think if they broke the news before and then they did the patch after, it might have even been slightly less bad. But doing it all at once, it just took all the, like, I've barely seen any people talk about the fact that new cards are dropping at Series 4. It's been a much smaller part of the conversation, because people are so focused on, like, I was expecting this and now I don't get it. Yeah. I don't know when I'm going to get it. If they gave us a time frame on when these cards were dropping, like, oh, they're staying an extra month or 2 months or however, I think people would have at least been a bit more understanding. But when you're kind of already building this kind of distrust and like not knowing what's going on, I don't know. It feels extra bad when they're like, well, we're just going to do it when we do it.
You know what? They could have got away with it. I think you hit the nail on the head. They could have got away with it. All they had to do was say, hey, like, they had to put Darkhawk and Knull into Series 4 with the rest of them. And then they could have done whatever they wanted and nobody would have cared, because those are the cards that they wanted. And it's like, well, we pay for Series 3, my bad. But like, we pay for that later. Like, they could have slid in the bad news.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it would have been like, okay, well,
people would have accepted it. I think there would have been like almost no controversy. There may have been a little bit, but I think it would have been very, very small. And you know why? Because they wouldn't have upset people's previous expectations, and they would be establishing new expectations for the future. When you're springing it on people when they're primed to expect something they've been wanting, and you say no, this is pony up. The famous quote from Goodfellas, "Snap you, pay me."
Yeah, man,
that's what it felt like.
I no doubt. I mean, I watched your video this week and I thought it was really on point, and I feel bad. Like there was someone in chat earlier mentioning like they were saving up tokens to get these 2 cards in particular this week, and now they can't do it. And it's just,
it's like, man, it kind of, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of how people felt when Kitty got taken away. Like people were expecting this card, they were excited to play with it, and then that was just like ripped away. And like even the people who have the tokens, I've seen a bunch of people like, I just don't know if I want to do this now, because I feel like if I'm buying this card, I'm kind of like supporting this decision. Like I'm kind of justifying their decision and saying, hey, this is going to stay here a while longer. If I'm buying it, like that's telling them like, hey, this works. Like people will buy it if we leave it longer. And I've definitely seen some reservation about the beautifully crafted thumbnail.
That was a good thumbnail. I mean, like it just felt kind of bad, and it really punishes the people who are trying to be competitive and build up their collection. Because like I had these cards, you guys have these cards, but it's just a bummer. Yeah, I don't know.
It's a shame. And I really do hope that, I mean, they haven't done a lot to build trust with me here on this, but I would definitely hope that they take some of this feedback seriously, because it is definitely the largest segment of like people that engage with my content. I've heard like this, and I said that in the thread I put out. It's like, I feel like this might be a bridge too far for people who are already on kind of shaky ground with the game. And again, I think this is a very small percentage of the player base. It's kind of like the online, very engaged folks, which probably is a very small fraction of the total player base. But, I mean, these are people who are generally very passionate about the game and want it to succeed. And I think, making some changes would kind of help with that a lot, because I don't think I've seen anyone in the creator space see this and not have some red flags going up about the fact that cards can stay longer because of their power and how valued they are as like a chase rare. And particularly the line that really got everyone was that some months we might just skip a drop. Like I think some people, or I also think what happened was I think they underestimated how many people were cool with waiting for cards to drop. Like people who finish pool 3 and they just don't buy many new cards at all, and they just wait for them all to drop. Because you can do that as a free to play, and as long as you're not in a rush to play these cards, you just get them all. And I think there were a lot more people doing that than they initially expected because of the prices being so high for buying a card on release. I think a lot of people just train themselves to be like, you know what? I'll get it when it drops. And that way I can continue to be a free to play or a pass only gamer, and I don't have to feel tempted with buying anything because I will get it. But it's just going to take some time, and I'll just pretend the card isn't. I mean, it's a little hard to pretend the card isn't there if you're facing it a lot, but like I think that's a sentiment a large part of the player base had. And now I don't know what those players are probably feeling particularly spiteful because you're giving them all the trash.
Yeah, I told the casual friend. He messaged me like a week and a half ago. He's like, should I spend 3,000 tokens on Darkhawk? I'm like, no, it's gonna downgrade. And now he's like, oh, I guess it didn't downgrade. Should I buy it? And I don't know what to tell him anymore.
I don't either. Yeah, it's a bad feeling when you don't know how to recommend, because like I can't overemphasize how, and anyone who streams Snap will tell you this, the number one question you will get in your chat is, if a new card is out and you're playing with it, hey, is this worth 6k tokens? Or hey, is this worth the asking price? And
there's only one answer to that question. Is the card Jeff the Shark? No, we should make a flow chart. Let's make a flow chart.
Oh, yeah.
Is the card worth 6k tokens? No. Is it Jeff the Shark? No, it is not worth.
Not worth 6k tokens. Yeah.
But even then, like in all seriousness, is Jeff worth 6k tokens? I mean, I don't know. Are they going to drop him down to Series 4? Ever? Is Jeff going to be a big bad? Because like he's the biggest, baddest, cutest shark around. I don't know. Like it's such crap. I am going to call a point of order here. I think we can go on about this topic that we feel so strongly about for hours. We still have quite a bit to cover, so let's.
It's not it's not covered, I don't think, in our show notes at all. But I wanted to talk super quickly about the high Evo nerf, like data mine nerf, because I think it's relevant. It just seems like good timing to this. So they said, okay, so here's Glenn Jones. High Evo will release as a 4/4. Previously, what was it, a 4/6, a 4/7?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. We're all kind of concerned, like, wow, they're putting this on a 4/7. Well, but like pretty premium.
So he says, just as a heads up, I generally won't answer questions related to data mining, marking an exception here since it's a week away and our own previously advertised asset was inaccurate. But like, the card is different? The card like that, it drastically changes, I think.
Well, and it's funny someone asked a question similar to this on the Discord, and like specifically like, hey, you're nerfing this card. He's like, that brings up like an interesting question of, can you nerf a card that isn't released yet? Like, is that considered a nerf when nobody's gone to play with the pre-nerfed version? And that is kind of a pretty interesting like philosophical question.
Well, I don't. Maybe you don't call it a nerf, but like still.
It's changing expectations again, right? Like people expected a 4/7, and now again, I say this every time there's a data mine video. Everything in the data mine is subject to change. A bunch of stuff has changed, so like, in fairness, like we can't rely on it. Like, I mean, we just saw the bundle changed. I did a whole little mini rant about that. How it went from 1,500 to 3K credits at the last minute. I had no idea that was changing. So always take the data mines with a grain of salt. Well, really, it's not always finalized.
And
so here's my very cynical take on high Evo. So Murdoch 750 in our chat says, I don't think high Evo is going to be that good, to be honest. And you might be right. Here's the thing. Mm-hmm. My opinion is more influenced on its big bad status than anything else.
If people are going to buy it if it's good or not,
yeah, people are going to buy it if it's good or not, and if it's not good, they will up the stats through an OTA, or they'll do something to buff it. I mean, they're going to want their cool card to see play. And unlike Kang, which is a very weird cerebral mechanic, this is an archetype, right? Yeah. Kang's not an archetype, which is why it should never been a big bad. I'm not even gonna go there. I don't think anything should be a big bad, but this introduces a whole new mechanic for play, and they're gonna want to see that archetype be viable, and so maybe it's very powerful, and that's why they changed it. I do agree. Can you nerf something before it's released? Does a tree fall in the forest? Does it make a sound? Well, the counter argument to that is perception is reality.
True. Well, how many people knew? Well, that's where. So this would bug me a lot less if the asset in the trailer wasn't a 4/7.
Yeah,
and
so
I understand the issues with that.
And that's why I say the perception is the reality here, right? Because it's not like this was uncovered through nefarious schemes only. Although if they were that concerned about people data mining their game, they could very easily encrypt it. Yeah, they could encrypt it with simple encryption. I think they want their stuff to be data mined. It generates buzz and hype, and we like it. And I like
it. I like it a lot. It gives me stuff to talk about and look forward to.
But remember when people were saying, like, I'll never forget, like, yes, it creates a new archetype for sure, and that's why they'll push it or whatever. But I remember people saying the idea of like, hey, this is this is your 4 mana 7 power. Like, you're going to run a deck with only 3 cards or whatever that are vanilla cards and have the
you don't need the full package, right? Like, you can choose.
Well, you do now because the card has no, like, because it was overstated,
it's
right?
The worst card, yeah. So
because
like one more bad card in your deck to offset like the good ones you're adding, right?
It seems bad now.
Like well, yeah, no, I'm agreeing. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, it's before, we were thinking of putting these small packages in, like 3 of the high Evo cards, because hey, he's a 4/7. Like, we're not playing him because he's a 4/7, but 4/7's not bad. It's fine, and there will be times when it's useful. And now, a 4/4 is not as useful in a lot of those times. Like, it is. I mean, it's almost half the stats. 4/4 is 4/4 is crystal. you're not feeling very good about.
Oh,
paying
don't. There's some crystal stands lurking out there.
I
I don't
know. I
want
gotta be
to. I don't
careful.
want
With
to.
I
all right,
mean-
4/4 is Moon Girl. It's not. It's
There
not
you
a
go.
big body. And it's
Yeah.
not supposed to be. So the fact that there's no text on it, it's like you're only gonna play that when you have literally nothing else, and
nothing,
it's
yeah.
still gonna feel bad when you do it.
This
So
is the
I'll say
worst
this.
part too. Oh yeah, go for it.
I was gonna buy it day one at 4.7. Now I'm like, maybe
I
I'll just buy
know.
another ultimate variant instead.
I've seen a lot of people questioning if they're gonna buy it because like, and Martian said it really well too.
Mhm.
It reminds us of like Baku, where you have this very powerful start of the game in the effect, but you get a lemon in your hand some of the time because that's your trade off for, other than Baku obviously has the restriction, but High Evo's trade off is it gives you very powerful cards, which I would argue are like either undercosted or kind of more powerful than typically for the cost. But now you have a chance of drawing a lemon that you're not really happy to play most of the time as a bit of a trade-off. And though maybe that's a balancing act, because maybe for all we know, High Evo's like busted, and that's an attempt at balancing the variance. It ends up feeling like a really bad way to do that because it just creates a lot of feel bads. You're like, oh man, I drew the High Evo this game. It's like drawing patches, right? Like it's just, or drawing Angel for a Snap analogy. It just feels bad.
Mhm.
Well, and listen to this. So he says, like, someone was comparing it to the old Thanos
Oh,
buff,
I love
right?
this. I love this one. Oh
This
my
is
God.
this is insane. Like this made me so nervous for the game in general. And I'm in the same boat with you, Blue, where I was gonna buy this day one, and I probably will wait now. But so somebody called Valmarin posted question: High Evo is now announced to be 4/4 with no kappa during the game. It's a dead card in the deck. Before you made up for Thanos when he was a 6/8 because he was a dead card. The grammar's bad here, so I'm paraphrasing. I don't understand the 4/4, but this is the important part, is Glenn's response. Thanos' physical presence and strength is a major part of his fantasy. He can 1v1 the Hulk. That's not as creatively important to High Evolutionary, though we did look for a size we felt added non-trivial presence when you're in a pinch. So there,
This doesn't do that.
Like,
The lore,
it's worse
the lore
than non-trivial.
argument.
Yeah,
The
lore.
lore
Thanos
argument,
is a
it
big
just-
boy, so he gets big stats, and
And
High Evo's not as big of a boy.
that's going to appeal to a certain segment of the.
Oh, for sure.
Aya.
It's not. Yeah, that gave me. I rolled my eyes so
I
hard
was rolling
when
them
I saw it,
just
and
now.
I just was waiting. I was like, oh, I gotta send this to Blue. He loves his lore.
The first
oh,
one to send it to him, and you were.
yeah. Martian said here on Twitter, I think not being a dud draw is important to the fun of the deck, though. If we need a flavor reason to make the card not feel awful to draw, I think its big bad designation warrants a less trivial presence. And I agree, like a 4/4, it's crap, mega crap.
It sucks.
It's super bad.
I feel bad about playing that on 3 with Zabu. Like it's just.
But it wouldn't be as big of a deal, I think, if it weren't being designated as a quote big bad. And I understand because it creates an archetype, it's a special thing. But God, like I'm truly questioning, because of the economy and my limited like bank account and ability to like cash tokens, that like I am questioning whether or not I want to get this now.
Yeah, it's not as sure, and I've seen a lot of people feel that way, where they're like, is it still as good of a thing? Because also, you have to remember, this is also a card that gets kind of one man countered, right? Like,
yeah, Luke Cage, I see in chat too. Like, yeah,
Luke Cage, and all of a sudden, your high Evo deck gets clowned on by a lowly little underplayed pool 3 card. It doesn't help with the big bad status there, right?
It's
like,
just
insta countered.
It's so funny though. Like at 7, like I would have insta bought it without thinking twice.
I would say even 5 was such a better number. 4, I really can't overstate how bad 4 is. Like, people criticize Stegron being a 4/5 because the effect was like, it's not always consistent in what it's going to hit. So, I mean, it's fine as a 4/5, but man, if that card was a 4/4, and I'm a Stegron defender, I like Stegron. I would not play Stegron as a 4/4, and he does something. Like, and that this card is just it. I think it had to be like a 4 or 5 to at least not feel terrible the times you're playing it. You still don't really want to play it, but you know, if you're having an awkward situation or the locations aren't going your way for some reason or whatever, you have to play it. I'm not gonna feel quite as bad about a 4-5. 4-4 is just like it's a whole nother level of it just feels bad. It's so little power.
Yeah. Oh, was he in the new? He was in the new Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Okay.
Yeah, he was the. I haven't seen it yet. But
I
know
haven't
he's
either,
like
but
the villain or something. He's a prominent character in the movie, and apparently the actor who played him did a great job. I've heard really good things. I want to see it probably next week.
yeah,
I just watched the Guardians movies in anticipation.
yeah, I want to see it too. But anyway, I'm sorry to derail us so much, but I thought
I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's a very relevant thing, and I think it's good to talk about. And it's interesting because we've seen cards change from early data mine to like full release, but I do think, and I understand, like they probably produce these things quite a ways in advance, which probably adds challenges, but it just feels weird when the promo material for the season is using all these like outdated assets.
Yeah.
Like the like Nebula was inconsistent. Like they had 2 different Nebulas show up, and trust me, I get it. You know, some of the stuff filmed very far in advance. It was accurate then. But like I feel like there's got to be a way to make that, and hopefully like because it's a minor thing, nobody should care. But as someone who does like the video production stuff, I just imagine it's got to be all timelines and them recording parts of it very far in advance because they do everything in advance, right? That's how all these card games work. They said they have like months of seasons planned in advance. They obviously make some changes and whatnot as things are still in active development, but the structure of it is very planned out. And I don't think they've really deviated too much from that plan. I feel like everything's kind of, for the most part, gone how they've kind of planned it. So maybe these changes were always a part of the plan. Maybe it was always going to be this time when they changed it, and it's unfortunate timing. It happened to be when it was one of this because this was the most anticipated series drop, right? Like, I mean, I guess last one was pretty anticipated too, but I say Darkhawk's way more anticipated than like the Bast Valkyrie one.
Yeah. Anyways, all right. Well, we can get on with our regularly scheduled program. There's still a lot of changes to talk about, and I was trying to not make it a 5-hour show, but I thought that was important.
Hours it is.
Yeah. All right. So ranked mode update. This happened midweek. It was like I was playing, and it was like, oh wow, this is different. I think maybe impacts me a little bit more because I'm not in Infinite yet, like both of you are, and let me see here. So here it is, right? Rank mode changed. So the number of cubes required to rank up has decreased from 10 to 7, which seems like a very strange, arbitrary number. And then the number of bonus ranks gained when tiering up has been reduced from 5 to 3. So before, like if you were going from 70 to 80, like it's when you hit 80, it plops you at 85. Now it plops you at 83. But it only takes 7 cubes to rank up instead of 10. So the progression actually, like I kind of enjoy it. Honestly, like I feel like I'm ranking up quicker, but I don't know how much of a difference it makes. It's interesting. And 7 was such a strange number to choose. But anyways, there's a developer note. It says we're continuing to make adjustments to ranked mode that will improve the overall experience for players. The changes coming with this patch feature some adjustments to the matchmaking algorithm and updates to the number of cubes/ranks while progressing through the season. There are more changes planned for future patches. Yeah, I don't know. It's the number feels very strange and arbitrary to me, but overall, like
I
kind of like it.
I arbitrarily hate it. the change itself is good. It's purely the number. I do not like 7 when we're playing for 2, 4, or 8 cubes a lot of the time. That bugs the crap out of me.
Right, a metric system stand if there ever was one. I think they picked the number because it means that an 8 cube game makes you climb a whole rank, whereas before you might not even get a rank out of it. It
just
makes
it 8 then.
But then you don't climb a full
But then
rank.
it's not as fast. I know. They clearly, I bet they considered it and they're like, well, it's probably not as fast as making it 7, and they want to make it faster, so
this
prioritized.
This change two things, right? So there's the quantitative and the qualitative. Quantitatively, it makes the climb technically easier. So for example, so now instead of getting +5 bump when you change tiers, so if you go from like 50 to 60, before the change, you'd go from 50 to 65. Now you'd go to 50 to 63. But now you need 7 cubes, sorry, zombies, to climb a rank instead of 10. So that balances out. What doesn't balance out is when you reset to 50, 60, if you're infinite 70, and you have to go from 70 floor all the way to 80 for your first, set. And now because of the change, that's minus 30 cubes on your total climb. So it is they did make it easier objectively, quantitatively, although not as much as last time when they did it. And for me, anything that makes the ladder less grindy, I'm for, but I'm very particular. Some people think it was already too easy. Some people think it's too hard. It's subjective. Qualitatively, there's been a lot of mixed feedback on this. I generally thought, well, hey, it's easier to climb. And like, I'm infinite when they made this change and I'm climbing, faster because it's shorter ranks, whatever. Some people said that they don't like this because now when you get to your next floor, you're at 3 instead of 5, which is closer to the ground. And when you lose big, the losses feel even more compounded than they did before. So the wins might feel bigger, so too do the losses. And because you start at 93 or 83 or 73, you can fall below that numeric threshold more easily than you could when it was going to 95 or 90 or 85 or whatever. So mixed feedback. I think that this is yet another band-aid to a ladder system that has some fundamental problems. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe the answer is conquest mode.
I don't think they do either. That's why we keep getting more changes. I mean, it doesn't bother me, but yeah, I agree. It's kind of like they've known that, like, I think ladder creates a really rough experience for like a pretty decent amount of players because, like you said, people feel those losses, I think, more than the wins, and we're like psychologically driven to like. I mean, it just feels you remember those losses more, right? Than
you will see when we do the meta section. Pre-infinite gameplay looks very different. It's
totally different. It's a whole different game, frankly, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and so it's probably worrying. The other thing that I think, and I'm speculating, so you take this for what it's worth. This is the Blutrane hot take hour. I think that they're either not happy with the number of people who are hitting infinite, or that number's declining, and so they're trying to find ways to get more people into infinite, especially since post infinite
you're segmented, right? You only face infinite players, so they probably need more of them than they used to need.
For most people in infinite, you don't hit bots. I was like 115 before. I haven't hit a bot. Not that that's a super good rank.
You don't see it very. You have to be. You basically, I believe, around the 140, 150 mark is when it starts a bit, but the threshold seems, unless you were already in the bot MMR, it feels like it's a higher threshold than it used to be. The people who are already there still get them. I don't think quite as much as they used to. They do see more real players now, but it's still a bit of an issue. But I think it's very difficult, and people don't really have a incentive. Like, there's no reason to grind the ladder that hard. It just doesn't really. You're not doing it for anything. You don't get anything for finishing 300 compared to like 105. It's the same thing.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you how I like this ladder system next month when ladder resets and I actually have to try hard for it. Although like every month I say, oh, this is going to be the month where I don't hit infinite because I don't care. And then I hit 90 and then it's like, well, I'm going to try and do the thing. So I will say that even though I had no real desire to hit infinite this month, I'm so glad that I did. And we'll talk about that when we actually look at the meta spread a little bit in our next segment.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for this, I suppose. All right. Then there's a new patch with more balance updates. So do we want to hit those real quick?
Yeah. So Zombies, why don't you take us through the balance changes that were introduced as part of the big patch?
Okay. Well, we'll keep this one a little bit more brief because I really think there's just really one like focal point here. The rest are kind of like not as big.
And it's Crystal.
Yeah. Actually, Crystal enjoyers rejoice. It is your day. and I am very happy for you. All right, so Kitty Pryde got changed. We went over this in the past, but they couldn't really fix the issue with Kitty Pryde with their current engine and how things were going, so they had to change her. Now you're no longer bouncing her manually. It happens at the start of every turn. However, to make up for this, now if you bounce her with other effects, such as Falcon or Beast, she gets the bonus too. So that was like, I guess it was it wasn't intended to work that way originally. But they decided to do it as a bit of a buff to make up for the fact that she was losing some flexibility. So you can't just like make a big kitty and keep her in play on turn 5. And Kitty's been really, really good. So this change doesn't seem to have impacted her in a very serious way. Maybe she isn't quite as usable in decks that were playing her before that had like a 6-drop because you can't. You have to play Kitty on the final turn unless you make your hand big enough to where she doesn't bounce back. That can be a thing, but that's pretty rare. So this we kind of covered this before. There's not much to say here. It looks like Kitty is still a really good card in spite of the fact that they had to change her because of the bugs. Crystal's a pretty big change. People have been asking for a Crystal change for a while. And she went from being one of the worst cards in the game to a kind of mediocre card, which is a pretty big jump, as maybe not as impressive as I make it sound.
Do my safety blade check? Okay, you're safe.
Yeah. So Crystal used to be, if you played her in the middle, you shuffle your hand in and you draw 3. People used to meme with this a little bit in negative, but it never really saw play anywhere. 4/4 is bad. Having a restrictive effect is bad. And those two things don't go very well together. Bad on bad does not equal good. It's just more bad.
Unless you're multiplying them, in which case it would technically. There's two negatives multiplied.
So does that mean if we can put 2 big bads multiplied, we get a big good? Anyway.
Yeah, that's why Galactus and Thanos together is.
That's why we're gonna get Big Good Jeff, right?
Oh gosh.
But Crystal draws a card now. On reveal, draw a card. For both players. If it was just draw a card for you, I bet a bunch of people would actually probably run to play this card because you don't get much card draw on Marvel Snap.
Okay, I'm gonna pile on the Crystal not being good train for a second. Like if people are like, oh, you could play this in Galactus because you need to draw a card. Why would I play this over Adam Warlock where I can draw multiple cards for less energy?
Because it's less draw dependent, right? Like with Adam Warlock, you have to get your other thing to make it big, and once you play the Adam Warlock, unless you like they know to play for it, so unless you have that yellow jacket or maybe like a Yondu, there's a lot of times I played him in Galactus a bunch, and the amount of times where I had to tempo him out because I wasn't gonna have time otherwise, and then he just never drew a card was pretty high. So, like, I get the appeal. I don't think it's going to be good, but I think it's worth trying.
It has been said that 4/4 is not a trivial stat line.
Yeah. I'd like whatever some of they're having. But yeah, I mean, this is a good change to Crystal. I think we should abolish all of the play this in the middle location cards.
Yeah.
Like, just remove that text. Like, get it out of there from Quake. If they really want to keep this, and I don't think they're going to, I think they're going to end up realizing that this was just like one of those things that like, oh, this is a neat idea for a way to make an effect work on paper, but in practice, it wasn't really, people just don't play the cards because they're too restrictive. So I think if they really wanted to stick the idea, what they should have done is if you play this in the middle, the effect doesn't happen. And it happens in the other 2 places. And it would make the card way less bad because you don't get screwed by one location, like which can be very relevant for old Crystal and presently Wave, or not Wave, getting ahead of myself, Quake. But yeah, Crystal, some people are going to experiment with it. I do enjoy seeing people like Safety try and take it for a spin. And I mean, I honestly do hope they come up with something with it that's actually pretty decent, but I took the list Safety was playing because I was like, oh, I like this list. It reminds me of my Zabu Zoo. And then he was running Crystal and Dazzler. And I'm like, all right, I know what cards I'm cutting. And I'm like, all right, I'll put in a Shang-Chi and I'll put in a Ghost to enable it. And there you go. We have like a way better deck. I just don't believe. I'm not a believer in Crystal. I'd love to be proved wrong though, so feel free. But it's not a terrible card. It's just like a kind of bad
below
card,
average,
which is a lot better than completely Giga Trash, which is where it was. So we take those, and maybe it wouldn't hurt if Crystal was a little bit better. But they specifically say, like, hey, they outline, we don't want much card draw in Marvel Snap. We want it to come at a pretty significant cost. So there's a reason they're not making this card super cheap or stat effective. They don't want to promote running this in a bunch of different decks because part of the enjoyment of card games is the variety in your draws. And in a 12-card game, if you can... you know what made me really realize the impact of this was like a few weeks or a month ago when they had that card draw location. I played Galactus, and man, it makes you realize how like teetering on the edge Galactus is, where if Galactus had one extra card draw a game, the deck becomes like, it almost felt oppressive. Like it was absurd.
It was Nova. It was when the Nova
Roma. Yeah, that's the one. And I was just like, I decided to play Galactus that day. I wasn't even thinking about it. I just happened to want to play it, and I was like, oh my god, this extra draw is insane. Because a lot of times you know that gets you that one draw you were missing, whether you were missing your Galactus or getting your Knull or whatever else. So I think it's probably smart to err on the side of caution, and this also gives something to mess around with for all the people who enjoy filling hand with like Master Mold and Ronin. And I will not be convinced that that is like an actual like good thing you want to be doing, but a lot of people seem to enjoy it, and some have even had success with it. So more power to them, and maybe this will work out well in that deck, but it's not the deck for me. But yeah, that's Crystal. Cool. I think a little bit less impactful than some were hoping. I think the real Crystal stands were hoping for her to be a bit more pushed, like Enchantress got. But I can see why they might not want to do that. Let's skip over the big one just for a second, because I think it's going to be the one we have the most to say about, and we can get Death out of the way really fast. Death, because of this other change we're about to talk about, Death is not able to function in the way she used to. We're costing 0 through a wave, so Death is going from 9 to 8 to hopefully enable her to still be played in Destroyed style decks. This is fine, and they also said, hey, if this isn't really working at 8, we are open to changing the card more in the future. We're just going to kind of start it here, see how Destroy does. If it needs a little bit more help, we'll revisit this change and maybe do more. But Wave is the big one. And a lot of people, I feel like I'm having deja vu with Lockjaw, where people are like, Wave is dead, and then later that night, Wave is in every deck.
so this is nothing like Lockjaw.
Well, it's not an actual. Yeah, I think that's just more people overreacting, because sadly, this change, and I should say what the change is before we go off the handle about it. It kind of killed a deck archetype, which was Death Wave Classic from Beta. You've always had the Wave Death interaction where you make the Death cheap with Wave. Death cost 4, cost reduce, cost 0 or 1 or however much, and you play a bunch of stuff. Well, Wave now does not care for cost reduction. Wave says your cards cost 4. Nothing can stop that.
Cost increase. I had it out with Dream Dimension, and it still kept everything 4.
Yep. Nothing changes it. It is 4. It doesn't matter what you have in play. It doesn't matter what the locations are. It doesn't matter if your card has cost reduction stuff as a part of it. Your cards cost 4. That's all there is to it. You can't even Jeff through it unless Jeff is your only card. So it's this is a big change, because it essentially murders the whole like the She-Hulk aspect of Doomwave. It completely just puts Deathwave out to pasture. Like, that's no longer a deck. Maybe someone will find something to do with the Destroy Shell without her, or I mean, maybe even with her, just a different build. But you're no longer cheating Death out with Wave. You and your opponent are on the same playing field. You are both playing one card, and there's really not much else you can do about it. Sandman at home.
But it's a Sandman that can ramp, and it costs 3, and it's a lot more flexible.
Oh yeah.
It killed Deathwave. It didn't kill Doomwave. It changed it.
It evolved.
Still
and also,
kicking.
it hurt like one of the best decks in the game, right? Which the stature deck, one of the big strengths of that deck was
Yep.
stature and miles get under wave. That doesn't happen anymore. And so I think that deck was really benefiting from the fact that it could get through wave because wave decks were very strong, particularly Doom Wave. So the fact that Doom Wave couldn't do its typical closer to lock you out with only one play, I think made the stature deck way better. And it's still a good deck, but I think we're going to see it fall a bit because it can't handle getting waved on turn 5 anymore. Like you probably have a pretty bad time unless you're ahead by a lot.
This was a big buff for the ramp decks. So Sandman is now running this, and I think
Sandman was running it before. It's just it feels like they
guess.
might use it in place of their Sandman now, right? Like before, wave was always just, oh, I'll wave into some ramp, and if I drew it late, like I'd never be playing wave, right? Because I'd have a 5-drop or a 6-drop to play or something. Now, wave on 5, especially if you have like Jeff or something to follow up, it's much more of a considerable play if you're worried your opponent's like bounce. Like, oh my, you are so happy when you have wave against bounce. It's like a 1-card win. Like they play a lot of cards and you just say no. And having that redundancy is very strong, so you don't just have to rely on Sandman anymore.
Well, now what we're seeing too is crazy that people are running wave into Odin just to continue.
And that was an old school thing. People used to do it. I remember, it's funny. I remember Binks was here before, and I saw him post the deck on Twitter. I'm like, I remember this. I remember when Darkhawk came out. Or no, was it Darkhawk? It was, no, it wasn't Darkhawk. It was one of the, or maybe it was. I think it was Darkhawk, but people didn't immediately jump to like the most busted thing to do with it. And I remember, or maybe Zabu. Zabu wasn't out yet. That's what it was. Zabu wasn't released yet. It was because Hawk was December, and so he made this cool Odin ramp deck, and he would go like Black Widow into wave, and then Odin that lane. So you give them another dud of no draw, and you wave them so they can't play it. So they lose 2 draws.
That's the deck he kind of brought back today, which
and I thought it was funny seeing that because I played some of that deck.
It's nasty.
Loved that deck. It was really fun, and it was before Hawk wasn't even considered. Most people weren't buying Hawk because they thought he was bad or very mid at best because Zabu wasn't a thing yet. And I loved that deck. I played that deck because I remember seeing it from Binks, and it was really fun. And now we're kind of seeing Wave being used kind of like that again because it's just really good.
Wave Odin was a mainstay of Lockjaw Thanos. So last month I hit Infinite with a Lockjaw Thanos. Was the 3rd time I did it, and that one ran Odin and Wave, and that was a very common line that I ran. But it could backfire before. Now it's back. But it can't.
Yeah, because they could get under it if they had like a She-Hulk
Sarah
or
whatever.
Even Sarah.
Or if there was a location like Titan. Now it just lets you take control of the game.
What's happening, right?
That new Patriot deck.
Anything else?
Yeah, new Patriot deck runs wave because Patriot likes to spam a lot. Like it's kind of like Lockjaw Thanos, that you like to spam a lot the first 3 turns. Then usually the latter turns you're doing 1 card, maybe 2, and you can do better with that. So it's a weird change. It made wave a lot less of a double-edged sword for the use cases where you want to control the flow of that game. It frankly took Lockjaw Thanos, which was an archetype that was struggling. And boy, does it feel good again. I was playing it before I got back on the Kitty Pryde monkey train today. I was playing Lockjaw Thanos, unchanged deck, the Lambie special. Only change I made was finding Jeff a spot because I need them Jeff boosters.
You better play him today. With the
I saw. I'll be honest. I snuck in a couple games before
while we were rambling.
Because I want to get those boosters, and then I realized it's probably not a good idea. But
it didn't show. I was none the wiser.
Fair enough. I only went once or twice before I realized not smart, but I was tempted. I'm like, I want my boosters. But yeah, Wave is not dead. The reason why I kind of jumped up when you said people are comparing it to Lockjaw is because Lockjaw, I don't know.
Lockjaw significantly. He's just still a
This
good
just
card.
doesn't
Whereas
feel
this is
like
different.
This doesn't feel like it feels like they nerfed Death Wave and buffed everything else. Like it's a
Yeah,
weird
I think
change.
Wave is a better card. Like I
Yeah,
agree because you don't have to like there were a lot of situations where waving into the final turn against quite a few different decks was not always a positive thing.
no,
And
it would
even
backfire.
I think the biggest one that really stands out is against it wasn't always super impactful versus Sarah before. Uh I mean it helped because they could only play two cards, but sometimes playing two cards was enough from them because they play like a Killmonger and a Shang-Chi, and that's really all they need. But then now, when they have to choose between one of those two cards on their final turn in their I want to play a bunch of cards deck, it feels really bad. It is like I think Sarah and this is also kind of relevant to Kitty because I honestly think the bounce deck would probably get really out of hand really quickly without this. I think the bounce deck puts out a pretty absurd amount of power, and since they constantly throw priority, it's pretty hard to nail them with a Killmonger. Like
It
it
is,
can
yeah.
happen, but it's pretty tricky because a lot of the times they are picking their things up if they're getting big, and if you're just trying to play out your game plan, you just take priority almost by accident. You have to be very mindful about it if you're trying to monger them. It's just super duper hard to do. So like the fact that Wave doesn't care if you're going first or second, it's affecting the next turn. And I don't think I've seen a game where I waved on turn 5 against a bounce deck and it wasn't met with like an instant concede. Occasionally you'll get someone who is running Chavez for consistency and just goes for it, but like almost every time it's met with the all right, I'm out. I'm good. The only time they stay in is if the player is smart and they read the wave is coming, so they kind of go off with Monkey on turn 5. And I've seen quite a bit of that. Like they get the idea this could be a wave deck, so they just go off on turn 5. And so that's something to think about if you're playing bounce. Wave is very popular if you're expecting
Or
it.
Sarah. Yeah.
Maybe you don't fully, yeah, or Sarah, maybe you don't fully greet it. Maybe you just go for a line that might not be optimal normally, but if it makes it so you don't lose the game to wave, it might suddenly be optimal.
And sometimes it's even correct to go in on 4.
Mm-hmm.
You know, playing Monkey and Mysterio on 4 is not a bad line at
It's
all.
just a
You're
decent
slamming
tempo. It's a lot of
10
stats.
points of power that only registers 6. It's not the worst, but
And they don't even know
anyways,
where 4 of it's going, which is honestly like a huge part of Mysterio, right? The fact that you keep them guessing on where you're playing your power. But yeah, I definitely second that. Tempo Monkey is kind of underrated.
Monkey good.
Yep.
We'll cover that in the meta section. But yeah, look, I'm biased. I was never a huge fan of Deathwave. Deathwave had its fans in our play group. Ben from work. I haven't talked to him about these changes yet. He was a huge Deathwave, Doomwave fan.
I gotta imagine he's not happy with this. Yeah.
Safety Blade, always pushing Deathwave, even when I thought maybe not. Although I don't know how he feels about the change. Probably doesn't care one way or another. I'm a big Thanos gamer. This is a wonderful change. I'm very happy. So sure, we lose Death, but frankly, like
You didn't really need it, right? Not even every version was running it.
well, and in the deck that we're gonna feature for the second week in a row that I hit Infinite with, this is just a little bit of a buff, right? Because like Death is just
Oh yeah, with the double threat Thanos Galactus, Death still goes in
yeah.
there because you're trying to Galactus people, right? And she's not going anywhere from Galactus.
No, and the wave doesn't
better.
really hurt the Galactus deck.
It helps it because it can't backfire as much.
Yeah,
not
like
that
you
it
don't
ever really
care
did,
most
but,
of the
yeah.
time, unless maybe if you don't have your Knull and you just have to go with a Chavez and you're behind. But most of the time, you're not going to get waved on turn 5 by an opposing deck when you're Galactus. And you might even blow their wave up if you end up getting priority. They might not even get to reveal it.
Yeah.
So it's not going to impact that deck, but it definitely makes wave function very differently than she did before. Where before people were just running wave because you had a good chance of locking your opponent and to let you slip in a She-Hulk or a Death kind of like under the lock. And people really liked that. It was fun and it was powerful and people did it. But now that's no longer a part of the equation. Now wave is purely you're either ramping out something ahead of curve where you're trying to limit what your opponent's allowed to play on the final turn.
Yeah.
Big fan of this change. I'm playing Wave in most of the decks that I'm running, except the Kitty decks. But I need my Wave variant. I still don't have it.
Well, you will have a chance soon. It's not in the news or anything here, but they are doing their first beta cosmetic bundle for the Wave season, and that's going to give you
actually,
a chance.
I like that Wave. Actually, you know what? That would be fine. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It has the country flag on it, the Philippines flag on it, which I didn't know. Someone pointed that out to me. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I kind of softened on that one because, well, it's a cool place, great food, wonderful people.
Agreed.
It's a really neat thing that they have that represented. Yeah, talking about bundles a little bit, just kind of an interlude before we touch on the meta. I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but there are new bundles in the game that you're never going to see because they're targeted at new players.
Unless you're new. If you're new, you might see them. Well, you will see them. And this is weird. Like, the bundles are very... I think this is something... And I mean, the bundle guy made a comment, and I'm like, man, you are brave to say I'm the guy who makes the bundles. People have a lot of feelings about bundles, so props to him for being like, I'm the guy who does this, because I would not paint such a large target on my back.
I'm the guy who makes the bundles, and please don't throw that ball at that target, because if you do, I'll fall into this big tank of comically sized water and get doused.
These are cool bundles. Just none of us are going to get them because we're not even going to be offered them.
You have no chance.
Well,
cool? all right. Here, so here's the thing, right, about these bundles is, they're like, oh, they're super value, right, and whatever, and I mean, they are
5x value.
I know, it's a mobile game classic. Yeah. It's like Hearthstone started to do that now too with some of the skins, like bonus 20% value, and it's all just like, it's an illusion of value. They're trying to get you to justify the purchase, so on and so forth. But this is interesting because this is kind of different. This is something they've never really done before, where they are letting people who are new to the game, and these will appear as soon as you finish the tutorial. We didn't have a date on these. We thought they were coming late because the data mine date said like April, or it was like outdated. The date had already passed, so I don't know if they meant to do these and they're behind, which could be a very real thing. But the dates are wrong, so a lot of us thought these were coming in July, and then all of a sudden they just started happening, and we asked some questions and they clarified a bit, and they're like, all right, basically when you finish the tutorial, you'll get a week of offerings for a new player, and you will get access to a Series 3 card in each of these offerings, and they were very specific about the cards that they chose. That's great. I love it, Nate. they like, people asked about it, and they were like, yeah, we chose cards deliberately, so there's nothing that's really going to like turn the pool 1 and pool 2 meta on its head. It's things like, they're good cards, but it's nothing that's going to like break the game. That's not the point. No, I know. We're getting there. We're getting there.
All right.
It's a process. Because this is worth talking about, because it's like a whole
12 hours later
thing, right? And so Thor, Black Panther, we don't have to go through them all, but a bunch of good, solid pool.
They're good cards. Oh my gosh.
But they aren't like, you don't have the tools to make them busted, right? Like you don't have Jane to draw the hammer. You don't have your Wasp and Ultron for your Patriot. Like, the cards get notably worse when your card pool's much smaller, right?
True.
So they're not as crazy as we're used to seeing them. They're just kind of all right. They're decent cards. But that's something they specifically mentioned, and they're like, yeah, good value for new players. You're going to see one of these every day.
The variant value is pretty good, though, I think.
It's very high. And that's why I think it's weird that obviously they're trying to entice players with what would we consider a better value. But I think they're missing out on some money here, because I know a bunch of players who are like, man, I would have just paid the $15 for that Thor skin and the credits as a bonus. Like, I would have just bought this. But oh well. And some people were upset because we don't know. I don't know if they clarified this. We don't know if you can get these avatars. Like, I don't know if you can get I mean, nobody usually cares about avatars, but some people cared about this. And they're like, can you get the Peach Momoko Thor? Because typically, bundle avatars are exclusive to the bundle. I don't think they've been available outside of bundles.
No, they haven't.
But this is different too, because Peach Thor, these are skins that you can just get in the game. All the skins that they have in these are available skins. So there's nothing exclusive to this. So you're not missing out on an exclusive skin, which is good because a lot of us were confused. We were like, these are skins in the store. Why are they offering these? And now it makes sense.
Real talk. If you're starting Snap, if today's the first day that you're playing Snap and you're tuned into this podcast, this message is for you. If you have the wherewithal to start this game today and be this far behind, and you buy this bundle, you deserve an avatar just for you.
That's pretty fair. That is pretty fair. And you know what I think part of this is that how they selected characters? They picked popular Marvel IP characters because I think that's how, because you don't know what Series 3 means when you're a new player. It says you get it very early, they allude to it, but you have no idea what Series 3 is. You don't know what Series 1 is. You're just collecting cards.
And it's a super rare and 5x value. They're throwing all these terms at you to like
and
make
ton more cards. And it's funny because you know they can only say that because it's at the beginning, because 1,500 credits does not get you a ton more cards later on.
It does when
but
you're
at the beginning,
it
gets you quite a bit. So it's not technically lying. And that's the best kind of not lying game. But yeah, this
you know what they say. What
weird.
You know what they say about a lie of omission is the worst kind of lie, right?
Yeah,
they're omitting
so
some. Yeah, it's not. And they said that
well,
these
no, the
bundles are
FOMO
going to
is
be.
what gets me. The
Yeah,
FOMO
it's going
is
to
really weird on this because like you're a new player, right? Let's say you're day one, you're playing Snap. Think back to when you started this game all the while back. You see this in your store. You have no idea how to evaluate it, and then you have a day. And then what if you decide later, I don't know what's coming next. I don't know if I'm going to like the next card. And you end up not liking the other cards. You're like, damn, I really wish I could buy Thor, but it's gone. I can't buy Thor anymore. Like, obviously they're trying to get that FOMO and get you to buy it, but like, I think it's really a shame they don't. Why don't they just put it at the bottom? Someone was like, well, we don't keep it in the store because it cluttered the store. Well, you already do clutter the store. You just move it to the bottom. That's what you could do with these. Just move it to the bottom and have it stay for the whole week, and at least let people choose. Because it just feels bad. Like I think it's going to lead to feel bads where people like don't know what they should get or what's good, and then by the time they might know by playing the game more, they're not going to be able to buy it anymore. It just feels bad.
At some point, we had this conversation in a different sort of format this week on the Born to Be Wild podcast. We were talking about this super exclusive Death Knight skin that's coming out.
Oh yeah,
but here's the kind of the way that it went is like, look, skins and avatars and all that stuff, like especially in digital media, I think that it will be exclusive for a time. But it's like printing money for them to make it available. Like, and maybe they make it exclusive for now, but at some point, like they'll make an avatar shop, or they'll say like, all right, this particular variant has been like
better be free.
Like say
for avatars.
Nah, but okay, say
I know what you mean. I'm just yeah.
Right. No, I know. I'm not a fan of the avatars really myself, but I have a couple that I like. But anyways. Or say like your Kim Jacinto Apocalypse, right? Like, hey, this was only available in this bundle and it was super exclusive and it's really cool. Mm-hmm. And I think you want players to enjoy that exclusivity, but at the same time, like they'd be losing out if they didn't make it available at some point. Because like, what if I wasn't playing back then, but I want it? Yeah, and maybe you wait like a year or wait a year or something and then put it in the shop. But like, at some point, I think
they'll bring it back.
At some point, if you really want the thing, like it as a digital product, like it'd be crazy not to, right? And if
it's all about managing the artificial scarcity, right? Like you have to make it scarce enough for people to want it, and then you bring it back when they least expect it, right? Like, oh, we're because I saw so many people had the same comment about the Sarah bundle. They're like, oh man, I wasn't playing back then, but I would have loved this. This is super cool. And like the Apocalypse, another big one, Sunspot, they were all really like, they were some of the better bundles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people would like the cosmetics, but they started playing late. And I do think they eventually will do that. But you can tell they want to keep that ambiguous because you don't want to like ruin your own FOMO, right? Like you don't want to say, hey, you can get these variants exclusively this way. And then all of a sudden, like 2 or 3 months later, oh yeah, you can get them again. And when you tell
Mm-mm.
people they're exclusive, and I think they will bring them back though. They're just going to be kind of careful about it because I mean, they can get away with doing that. There's not much downside for them.
No, it's free
Other than
money. It's
optics, yeah.
but it's time. Like you have to let people feel special for a while, right? It's just how long is that, and at what point
For
do we?
sure, for sure. I'm curious to see what they determine with that as well, because I do think, even as someone who owns the bundles, I don't like making things like I hope that they give people a chance to get the Spider-Man or the Venom card back again, because that's what, like, my favorite card back in the game. I'm a big Venom fan,
Yeah,
but
same.
a lot of people, it was season 1, so even if you were playing, you're probably pretty new.
Was
And I
that
don't
for
know about all
Infinite
of
or what was
you.
it for?
It was for Infinite for the
Uh,
first season. And I don't know about all of you, but when I started Snap, I was terrible. I
yeah,
was really, really bad at the game, and I wasn't anywhere. I wasn't rank 50 when
well,
I first started in beta. So like, uh, most people weren't going to get to Infinite the first season, especially with a new, like, you're just starting the game, you're building up your collection. Most people
yeah,
weren't going to get there. So
yeah.
like, I hope they, even as someone who owns like the fancy shiny thing, I hope they give people a chance to get it again because it's a really cool card back, and it sucks to have such a iconic card back, not available just because you missed like this certain window. I mean,
Well, they'll probably do what Hearthstone did, and it'll take some time,
maybe you
but
can
then
buy
it'll
it.
buy it later. You
Yeah.
know.
Because they are, and we're not going to talk about it, but one of the upcoming bundles, it's their first bundle introducing a card back.
Right.
They're going to do a Miles bundle, and it's going to have a Miles Morales Spider-Man card back, and it looks cool. Not cool enough to make me buy it, but it's a first time they're doing that, and
Well,
they're
they're
bringing back the card backs with the beta pass. They're giving the beta cosmetics. They're giving the card backs for that pass, and so I don't know how much people really value card backs, but they're kind of neat little bonus thing, I
well,
think.
they did that survey a while back. Remember where they were asking those questions like, well,
We need another one of those.
how
It's been
much
a
do you
while.
value avatars? How much do you value
I
card
have some
backs?
things to say on the final the final. Any other things you want to tell
Yeah.
us?
All
Yeah.
right. Well, we're at 2.5 hours. Let's talk
Oh yeah,
about the
we're
meta.
going long. It'll be short
Yeah,
today.
maybe we cut out the deck section or
Well, it
something. We'll
doesn't
see how
matter,
we feel.
but let's talk about this. So I've got this whole thing up taking the whole screen because the font was
Yeah,
really small.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
that's a
wanted
good
to
move.
show it side by side like this because um, I thought this was really fascinating, and it kind of shows a tale of two metas, pre-infinite and post-infinite. Now, when you look at the decks, and by the way, this is as of the last big patch, so this data is relatively immature. The sample is continuing to evolve, as is the meta, but I think this is a pretty good snapshot at the time of recording. Our good friend NHL NJFan1 did a similar check on snap.fan because they grouped the data a little bit differently, and it largely held the same results. So I feel pretty confident talking about
hey,
this.
wait, which one is which?
So the one on the left
Uh-huh.
is infinite,
Okay.
and the one on the right is ranks 80 through 99,
Gotcha.
which is what I'll call sweaty ladder.
Ah, yes.
Now,
I feel
Pretty
that one.
accurate.
So, I think that the decks that were good before the patch are still good. Shuri Stature, not Shuri
Death
Stature,
Wave.
not Deathwave. Black Bolt, Stature, Darkhawk, Sandman Ramp. I think the only real change here is that Doomwave evolved, Deathwave, which wasn't doing so well before the patch, is dead. And Bounce or Kitty Pryde decks are heavily represented. The thing that's noteworthy about these two side-by-side views is not what is good and what is bad, not what is winning and what is not, but what is being played. So let me elaborate. There are three big outliers in here, and the first one is Electro Ramp. So Electro Ramp is a categorization of a deck archetype that basically runs Sandman, Wave, Electro, and it ramps and it plays big things, and it tries to mitigate the fact that it's a greedy deck by limiting your opponent. It's very good against spam decks, Sarah decks, bounce decks, etc. So at Infinite and beyond, it represents 2.9% of the meta. Between 80 and 99, 10.5. So it's basically 3 times more prevalent pre-Infinite. That's huge.
Yeah, I don't think you can really like overstate how big of a difference that is. Like, we're seeing and this reflects my experience too, because I'm like, I know Darkhawk is really powerful. I know it's a really good deck, and it probably maybe even got slightly better with the wave change, arguably, possibly. And I don't see it very much. Like, I can probably count on one hand the amount of Darkhawks I've seen over like 10 hours of game time. I do not see much Darkhawk at all, or the stature deck. Yeah,
well, let's talk about stature.
Surprising.
Again, 2.9% of the meta post Infinite, 7.3 pre. It's dropped off a little bit because wave hurts stature, but it's still a very good deck, and it still sees a lot of play because it wins games. Galactus, another one, sees quite a bit of play post Infinite with 5.9%, but pre-Infinite, a whopping 11%. So what you're seeing here is basically there are deck archetypes that people want to play or feel comfortable with, and they are a lot more popular. There's a lot less ladder diversity pre-Infinite. I was playing Kitty Pryde Sarah today on ladder post-Infinite and having a wonderful time with it. But man, would it be miserable to try and play a deck like that into like if 1 out of every 5 of your games is going to be Galactus or Electro Ramp, that's just like not gonna do it.
Well,
right?
We remember what happened last time with the last time the Sandman deck got a buff, right? Like they kicked him right back because they know you do not want Sandman to be a popular meta deck. It's just annoying.
But right now it's kind of like the thing to deal with.
Well, it just works into wave, right? Like you don't care if they wave you because I'm waving myself. Like I don't care if they do it, and I do think we're gonna see a rise in that, and also the whole Kitty Pryde thing. So many people are playing Kitty Pryde because she was free, and it's a relatively budget deck. I think Darkhawk's really the only not budget card, and you do not need Darkhawk to play Bounce. I played Bounce without him, totally fine.
So Bounce is an interesting thing. That's the consistent thing between the two metas. It's over 10% post-Infinite and about 12% pre-Infinite. So people are playing it, and it has good win rates too. But I think you're going to see those numbers drop pre-Infinite. I do think that this is a symptom of what we were talking earlier about the ladder. And frankly, it feels bad to lose. Everybody wants to hit Infinite. It's like it's the goal. It's the goal of
they want
ladder.
Casual mode, and that's what Infinite is. It's ironic. It's very ironic.
That's what I want. I think for most people, like the same person that I asked about the changes, what they think. So they hit 70 this month for the first time. It's awesome for them. He wants to hit Infinite because he wants to do the thing, right? He wants to.
Everyone wants to do it once. Like people always wanted that in Hearthstone. It's like hitting Legend for the first time was a big deal.
Once you get it, though, it's like you're chasing it, right? Like I mean,
I don't think everyone ends up like that, but people like us particularly do because we're like engaged card game people.
Fight gamers.
Well, and then there's almost
I don't know.
I guess as a content creator, there's almost like an obligation, right? Like, I mean, I watched the Binks video and I thought it was really good about how you shouldn't feel like you have to, but at the same time, it was very good, and I agree with it. But at the same time, like, I think some of us get a sense of like imposter syndrome, right? If we're not like good enough at the game. And so it's like, hey, I create content about this game. I need to be good at it. And like, how do I represent my being good enough? Like I get the card back, like I hit Infinite and I tweet about it. Like, and then it feels super bad when you're not winning. And like, that's where I'm at right now. Like I just have been, I mean, I'm not losing, but I'm not like, I'm stuck in the in the 80s or whatever, and it's like it's just it's It's brutal,
You don't feel
man.
like you're going anywhere. You spin your tires, yeah. And I think what you said is very true about like this sense of imposter syndrome. I know quite a few people who create content with the game who did not get infinite in the Zabu season. And you know what? I thought I was going to be one of those people because I hated it. I have never, I think there are arguably worse metas, but I have never hated one as much as I have hated the Zabu meta because it was just so frustrating. It ended up being, oh, they have Zabu on Curve and they snapped. I do not. I'm going to leave this game. And it's like, I literally felt like I was flipping quarters. I felt like we were just taking the 50-50 on like, oh, who drew Zabu this game? And the game was over on like turn 2 or turn 3. I feel like I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh or something. And it just wasn't fun. And I saw a bunch of players struggle with that. And it's like, I think this game
snapping that month was
creates.
just so.
It was so bad.
God, it was so.
And even in the
I have
Thanos
like the
lockjaw
Twitch
meta,
still.
it was really bad with snapping because
All right.
players were not confident in the.
All right,
Yeah,
so here's the thing. Like,
Mhm.
I really like the deck, so I think that felt less bad for me. I hated Shuri, but
I
I
mean,
was
playing against it, not
yeah,
playing with
no,
it.
I
I think
know.
playing with it, you knew when to snap, but it was so hard to snap versus them because you
Yeah, of
didn't know what
course.
was going to happen until it happened. And then Shuri, it was hard to snap versus them because if they had the nuts, you just were going to lose most of the time. Um,
You
so
gotta
the game
snap
feels
early.
worse when that happens, right? Like it's a very noticeable feeling when all of a sudden you don't like as an experienced player, you don't really know anymore when to it feels like you remove a big part of the game when it's like hard to tell when to snap
Yeah.
and you're otherwise like good at telling that and it makes the play experience a lot worse. And it's not even just creators who have this sense of imposter syndrome. Like I've seen a bunch of people who they've gotten there before a bunch but they'll be struggling one month and it creates this ladder messes with you psychologically.
Yeah.
This is much closer to someone playing like a bunch of hands of poker than sitting down and jamming some Hearthstone or jamming some Magic. Like this will mess with you more psychologically because of the snap system than I think any other card game by
One of
far.
the one of the content creators on Twitter that we all know, Bootman, had a tweet that really resonated with me. I don't always agree with his takes, as some of you know, but this one was like, yeah, he got it. He equated pre-infinite ladder to like being like going to a casino and going into a poker like a limit like a limit poker tournament where people just like check raise because like there's a limit, so they just go all in to the max every hand because they've got the bankroll and don't give a I'm not going to curse again, don't give a frig, and that's what snapping feels like to a lot of people. Like they'll just do it, and it's like, are they bluffing? Are they not bluffing? Are they just trying to be a jerk? Like there's no real rationale to it. You know, Lee Acer always says, well, they snap, they always have it. That's true to a large extent pre-infinite because
There's stakes. Yeah.
yeah, like I mean you've got people that all want to climb, so it just feels bad. And you know, if you get the one guy like Ben from work, I bet you if you queue into Ben from work from ladder, he's not
He's an
infinite.
early snapper.
He's not going to have it. But how do you know that? Because
Yeah.
you don't know Ben from work. And Ben's fearless. He doesn't care. Like he'll just be like, I like this hand. I don't like your avatar. Snap. He's like, I'm like that's but like that confidence is so empowering because like he just goes for it and he gets rewarded for it. So you know, it's just like yeah, the ladder is just blah.
It's
And
also
so what you
different
see,
experiences too for like
yeah,
different
so you
people,
see
right?
this
Like
this concentration of archetypes because everyone's looking for that consistent steady climb. And we're
you
gonna
want the
probably
golden ticket to take them to
yeah.
infinite, but the truth is there isn't one.
Well, there is. So this is going to change. But if I had to recommend a deck to ladder with pre-infinite right now, I would recommend the Iron Lad Patriot deck because it has game into
In the
Galactus
wave.
because it gets under it with debris. And it has game against Electro Ramp because you're running wave yourself. You don't care as Patriot because generally after turn 3, you're just slamming one big card down a turn, but you already went wide, so you just knock them over, right? And against Stature Black Bolt, you do pretty well because you just go wide and then tall, and it's not really a point slammy deck in the same way. And you're running Wave also, which just completely knocks over Stature. So I think that deck is quite well positioned into what the meta looks like right now. Of course, as the meta shifts, that may change. But that would be my recommendation based on what I'm seeing be good and what's kind of good into those things. Your mileage may vary, so be careful with what you play. If you're listening to this on Spotify, like in 3 days from now, it might be different. This is why tools like Snap.fan and Untapped are very powerful, because when metas are concentrated, it can be easier to try to look for that breaker and lean into it. And that's why, like, as much as I hate the hot locations, they oftentimes serve as vehicles to help climb, because what it does is it does two things. It centralizes the meta, which makes it easy to play into it or against it. And then you got a whole segment of people who are just going to be stubborn, and those become free matches.
And
so
they suffer for being stubborn a lot
Yep.
of the time.
Yeah.
Not changing decks.
Yep.
You also may see more bots.
Experience.
You also see more bots because I'm convinced less people play during hot locations. Not this one, because all it's doing is giving people boosters.
Where's the tinfoil hat? It's coming out.
No. I swear. I saw this.
I don't know
in
if
my
I believe that, but I could see it. But I don't think
in my
enough of the
MMR?
casual.
Well,
Okay,
remember
in our MMR maybe.
Yeah,
but
like, so matchmaking's
I don't
MMR
think most
based.
people that's true. Like, I think
So-
for lower, like, down casuals, I don't think people think about, oh, there's a hot location, I'm not gonna play the game today. But maybe there are more of them than.
Oh, people see the hot location. They'll be like, I don't know. I'm not dealing with that. I don't know.
Yeah, with all these restrictive ones, maybe. Yeah, it's possible. It is
So that would
possible.
be my pick. If you're wondering where you can get the list, KM Best tweeted a version of it, and what's was it
Moyen
Moyen?
did the new
Yeah,
one today.
Moyen.
If
Yeah.
you are not following, I'll put him in the chat here. If I can spell
Here,
his name. Here we go.
I got the
You
link to
got
his
it.
tweet. I'm gonna put it into Twitch chat.
If you don't know Moyen, though, I don't know if he used to be a professional Hearthstone person or not. He has HS in his name. I believe he did compete, but he was a very, very good player there, and he is a very, very good player in Snap. He won a tournament today, but he's won quite a few tournaments in the surprisingly blossoming Snap competitive scene. There are a lot of people doing tournaments, and he's had a lot of success. So he knows what he sees, and even though tournaments are a little bit better than ladder, it's not better, a little bit different than ladder. These all look like, I saw these lists, I retweeted, I was like, these all seem really solid. Like, it's so funny how I used to be like, oh, 2 6-drops is too greedy for Patriot, and now look where we're at.
The only thing that I will say about he posted 3 decks, a Wave Sand, Patriot Lad, which I just sent to Nate. Hopefully you can get that up on the screen.
It's already up.
And then Lockjaw Thanos, being somewhat of a Lockjaw Thanos savant. He's running leader in his Thanos. Do remember that these lists were tailored for a tournament. If I was gonna play Thanos on ladder, I wouldn't run leader. I would run arrow.
Interesting.
I would run arrow over leader because Galactus is very common on ladder, even post infinite, whereas leader is kind of basically you're kind of leaning more into that wave Odin synergy and
you need to be
getting
ahead, right? Leader
Yeah.
from behind, you can't use it, and obviously you hope to be ahead, but you're not going to be ahead every game. And Galactus is the main reason, right?
Did Cam's Best's Iron Lad list, did that not run Mystique either? I'm gonna check right now.
No, it did. I believe Mystique for Wave was the main change, and also he didn't run Ultron, but Ultron has been picking up in popularity now because we want another. Before, people were worried, like, oh no, I could Iron Lad into Ultron, which obviously isn't ideal if it fills up your board too soon, but I think people realize worst case, it's not that big of a deal, and also it's not going to happen a whole lot. It did used to have Mystique, but it looks like he's experimenting with Wave in the Mystique spot, and I imagine that is mainly against all the bounce decks, which I'm sure were probably pretty prevalent for this tournament, I'd imagine, because Bounce was putting up some pretty good numbers and good results. So this feels like a tech against those kind and Sarah decks, right? Sarah decks have been very good. So I believe that's the idea. Is the he said Patriot only loses to Enchantress, and honestly, I don't know about you guys, and obviously my experience is different, being like post Infinite, and I mean we looked at the numbers. The numbers can be very different. I have not been getting as Enchantress as I was, a week or two ago. I feel like there is maybe it's just because I'm not running into the decks where she's popular, like the Darkhawk. Maybe it still is really popular, but yeah, like this deck, you really do only fear Enchantress. Like you maybe a Shang-Chi, but
he cut Debris. Honestly, guys, like looking at this, like I think
hated Debris. I hated Debris so much in this deck when I
Debris.
played it.
You need it though for Galactus.
It's anti-Galactus.
If you see a lot
but
of Galactus, I would agree that the KM
when
version is probably better.
When 11% of your freaking meta is Galactus, you have to run Debris. But I do think you want Ultron in here. Maybe, I don't know. You probably cut Cosmo for Wave, and you cut.
Well, if you want to hedge versus Galactus, I think you have to pick, right? Like, I don't think you want to split the difference here and have like one tech card for some and the Debris for Galactus. I think you want to commit.
Is Ultron a tech card?
No, the Cosmo. You're saying maybe cut the Cosmo. Cosmo is your only thing other than Debris that stops the Galactus, right? Like, Debris nice, but you're not getting it every time. And if you're seeing that much Galactus, I think you need the Cosmo over the Wave. But it's a meta call, right? Like, if you're not seeing a lot of Galactus and you're seeing a lot of bounce, Wave is way better than Cosmo.
But you're seeing so when 10% is Wave, when 10% is bounce, 10% is
maybe
Galactus, and 10% is
Darkhawk,
Electro Ramp.
Oh, ramp.
Yeah, and then another
I think
near
Cosmo's
10%
better
is
than, right? Because you don't want to wave an Electro Ramp deck because you're not going to get any benefit from waving them on 5, right?
No.
And if you wave early, you're helping them. So I feel like climbing the Cosmo version is probably a better deck.
Also, Iron Lad and Ultron can kind of clash.
Yeah.
Why do we have Iron Man in here? I don't get that.
For the lad. It's for the lad high roll, and it works pretty well. Although it's totally possible these decks are a little top heavy, but I mean people are putting up the numbers with them, so they seem to work. I know it feels weird sometimes. You don't have a lot of early game, but they do just kind of work. Like the numbers, and even as time, I know Iron Lad's like a low sample card, but like the time continues to extend that he's been out, and these numbers aren't going down very much. Like it's pretty proven. And
if I do a real time untapped 70 to 99 right now, Patriot Lad is third highest deck, second highest win rate. Although its popularity hasn't quite caught up to the other decks. The best.
Well, yeah, because most people don't have Iron Lad.
You know what?
I'm going to
the highest performing.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Iron Lad is surprisingly good. I was nervous about buying it, and I decided to, and
he's just a pretty good card. He's not good in everything, but man, do you feel it when he nails those high rolls? And worst case, like you want to build him in a deck that's designed to take advantage, and the Patriot deck just does that really well, right? Like your Mr. Sinister is no longer trash because if you Iron Lad a Sinister, you're happy. Brood gets an inclusion again because of that too. This is why I kind of hated Debris, was because yes, it's good versus Galactus, but so many times I was like running out of board space because I'd play Brood and then I'd draw Debris, and it's like, well, now I can't play this card unless I'm like willing to lock myself out. So that's why I didn't really like the card in there as much, though you do sometimes need other ways to go wide. So I see the argument for, and obviously good Galactus counter. If you're seeing Galactus a lot, you probably want to run the Debris. But I think both these versions are good. They're just slightly different. I think they're optimized versus different things.
And the best performing version on ladder right now is splitting the difference between the two. So it's running Wave. Yeah, I just posted it. It's the samples are pretty small because it's a new deck and it's a new patch.
It's like brand new.
But this one seems to be head and shoulders above the rest. That could obviously change. But it's running debris
Maybe I'm
wave.
wrong. Maybe you do just split the difference and say,
I don't know.
We'll just have some stuff we'll have the debris for Galactus and wave for the other stuff. Maybe it works out. And it's crazy to me that we have 3 6-drops in a Patriot deck now, but the data doesn't lie. It seems to work.
I think you're going for those
yeah.
Iron Lad high rolls, I guess.
Well, it's just there are very few misses, right? Like,
yeah.
And even the rare time it misses and hits a wasp, like you don't care that much.
You have 2. So I think the reason why this is good for ladder, the one I pasted here, is because basically you have 2 auto wins against 2 of the most popular decks. Wave into bounce is auto win. Debris into Galactus is auto win. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of that simple.
And then for Electro Ramp.
And then you do good stuff. You get through. You don't care about getting Sandmaned. You don't care about getting waved. Like, this deck doesn't mind it at all. I mean, maybe you might have to play that Wasp on turn 5 if you're suspecting they might do that, because I've had that be relevant before. But Patriot, that's why it thrived during when Sandman was on top, was because Patriot doesn't care. It does not care about one card a turn.
I would probably run the one from Untapped just because it makes the most sense to ladder. But this is like one of those, like, it makes sense right now, May 20th, 10:30 Pacific time. Perhaps by tomorrow it won't.
I will be the guinea pig if we need someone to run it, because I still need to hit Infinite. So
I'm not like super into Patriot as an archetype, so
I've played a ton of it, so I know how to play it. But
although this one does seem interesting.
The wave inclusion
this deck's very straightforward. It's like, I mean, maybe this version's a little bit different because you have the wave, but like it's pretty straightforward.
Stone.
Kind of, yeah. Like you curve out when you can. And that was one thing I really liked about Moyen's list, actually, was he put in another 2-drop. And man, do I hate not having 2-drops in this deck. Only having Mr. Sinister annoys the crap out of me. I was running Mysterio at one point. Half the reason was because wanted to test it. Does Iron Lad copy Mysterio? What do you guys think? Does he copy or does he not?
Well, there's nothing to copy because Mysterio is not an ability. It's just a mimic.
Well, I mean, it's text on a card, right? Like he copies the text. Any card.
I mean, I'm guessing here because I haven't seen it, but I'm guessing it doesn't. You don't get 3 freaking Iron Lads if you.
Well, no. I was wondering, is it going to summon the fake Mysterio copies?
No, I don't think so.
It doesn't, right? However, there's an edge case, and I saw this play out. I think Browde did it, and I was like, wait, what? So if you copy Mysterio, it does nothing, right? There's no effect, nothing. Mysterio's top card, Iron Lad gets the text though. If you bounce your Iron Lad and you replay him, he transforms into Mysterio. He becomes regular Mysterio. He is a 4-power. There are 3 Mysterios.
That's an intended interaction, is it?
I don't think it's intended, but it's really funny. It only happens if you bounce him and he has the Mysterio text, but he literally transforms into Mysterio. He same power. It's all the Mysterio card, but it's Iron Lad doing it. It's quite funny. Mystique is a whiff with Lad. So the funny thing, that's not even always true. Having played the deck, I get why some people took Mystique out, but how with Lad doesn't see himself in play. So if you go Patriot and then you play Lad and Lad copies Mystique, the Mystique effect on the Lad will copy the Patriot. So you can actually still hit with it, which is kind of cool. I can understand why some people cut it out. Because it can be awkward. Like, obviously, you have to have played an ongoing before, and it's not always going to happen. But it's not as bad as it might initially seem. But I definitely understand why some people are cutting it. But I really like how Moyen put in another 2-drop, because this deck doesn't do anything in the early turns. Like, there are a lot of games you pass until turn 3, and if you have a really bad hand, you might not even have something to play on 3. Like, you have to know when to get out with this deck, because sometimes you will have bad hands.
Yeah.
So he cut the debris for the 2-drop, which makes sense because if you look at Moyen's other deck in the lineup, he's basically saying, I'm not going to run into Galactus.
And you won't because it's a tournament, and almost nobody plays Galactus in a tournament.
Unless your name is Revis, in which case you win a tournament with Galactus.
Yeah. Oh, Revis can win a tournament with Crystal. I wouldn't put it past him. He's a really good player.
Crystal Slam! Wow, what a Crystal Slam!
I know, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, safety brought it on himself.
I know Raxius likes Crystal a lot too. We're bullying Crystal.
Yeah, well, I mean, Crystal played herself by existing.
Yeah.
Anyways, these are, you know, I think that the archetype's evolving, the meta's evolving, but certainly it's an interesting take on Patriot.
Keep an eye on Patriot, and if you like or own Lad, this is probably one of the better things to do with him.
Whereas Den from Marvel Snap Zone likes to say a silent performer. It's an up and coming, right? You're getting in front of the meta.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised it's not more popular. And you know the
question I think you're right
about
Iron Lad
is, will we get a Lannister level inbred meta with Super Scroll again, or not? If this becomes popular.
Okay, all right. I want to say this because I am not. I don't like Super Scroll, and I didn't like them in the movie. I was like, when I found. Spoilers about the Miss Marvel film if you haven't seen it. But when I found out the Skrulls weren't the bad guys and the people from Hallow were, I was mad because I didn't like them at all. I don't know. It was just not for me. Anyways, the Patriot deck with Super Skrull in it on Untapped is the second highest one, right?
Well, yeah, it's just one of those things where if Patriot becomes super meta, Super Scroll into other Patriots is absolutely absurd, and we saw that in the tournament meta. But it's funny because it only lasts for a hot minute because then something comes to take down the Patriots, and then all of a sudden the Super Scroll isn't as good anymore, and then people drop it. I think it's gonna happen again.
It also has some really unanticipated consequences.
I got someone with it where they copied. I was playing it's basically Kitty Shuri. It's old Shuri with Kitty in it. And I played a Red Skull. They played Super Scroll on turn 4 or something. And I played Red Skull into Lizard, and they lost the game because
the Lizard.
They lost because they buffed my lane, copying my Red Skull, and then they copied my Lizard, and they lost because of it. I was dying.
That's so funny.
I've been playing a bunch of lane control, and I've had people do it with it copies the Professor X.
Oh yeah, they don't expect the X, and they play it down, and they just lock another lane. God, it's really funny.
If you're a Super Skrull gamer, you'll probably have some pretty fantastic backfires, but you know,
it's hard to tell what it copies sometimes because it doesn't.
Yeah, it's not very well. Not very well.
I think they're worried about overloading all the visual effects because there's so many visual effects that it can have. It can get out of hand, but I do think they should do something to indicate, because most people get confused when they copy the X because it doesn't show you the lane is locked. And it's like, wait, why can't I play cards here? Oh, wait, I played Super Scroll and I copied the X. I had someone, you've probably seen this with Galactus, Nate, where they try and Super Scroll your Galactus lane to copy the Knull.
Oh, yeah.
But then I predicted them doing something like that, so I just didn't play it. Mm-hmm. And they got stuck copying my Electro, and they just lost. It's so funny when it backfires.
It's ongoing. It's so good.
Oh, that's so great.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny. Yeah, Ebony Ma is the ultimate scroll counter. Zampage in our chat just remarked. That's so funny.
That is pretty good.
My favorite thing about the card is
man.
People.
Well, we've been at it for 3 hours now. Do you want to talk about these decks like lightning round or? All
right, we'll do it in 120 characters or less. I'll set the stage and you'll have to follow. So we wanted to feature some decks that we've been playing, and I will put my succinct hat on. So we featured this deck last week. We talked a little bit about it. This is Concern Mom's Thanos Galactus deck, and I hit Infinite with it. It is very good. And it's kind of hilarious because they don't see Galactus coming.
I'm really jealous of your variants. There's some really good ones there.
Yeah, I just got the Galactus one. Not Galactus I want, but I still got it all the same because it was a 700. I want baby Galactus. I want baby Thanos, although I'm eyeing the Flaviano Thanos. And Spider-Man,
Whale
while I like
Thanos.
Sorry?
Whale Thanos.
Whale Thanos, yeah. I like this Spider-Man with the blue hood. There is a Spider-Man
have
coming
that
to the
one. It's a
shop.
cool one.
Yeah, there's one coming
It's
to
in
the
the
shop that I
past too. We get a cool
like.
one in the past too.
Oh, maybe it's in the past. I have to see. There's a
They're
Spider-Man
two.
somewhere.
They're both. It's both.
Okay.
There's a bundle and it's coming in the past.
I like the
Is it
chibi
this-
one that came with the Sandman one. I'm surprised you're not running that.
I love that one too. But he didn't buy it.
I didn't
Oh.
buy
He
it.
skipped.
I skipped.
Blasphemy.
And I guess I don't know. It was the same month where there was like the
There were
anime
a lot of
bundle, and I
bundles
just
and
couldn't
it wasn't good
afford
value.
it.
The value.
No, the value
bad.
was really
It was
bad.
terrible value.
If it ever comes back, I might pick it up, but whatever, it's fine. Anyways, Concerned Mom Galactus Thanos. Concerned Mom tweeted about it last month or earlier this month with some tips on
like
playing it.
3 weeks ago.
It's the real deal. A bunch of other people hit Infinite with it, including Nightwing, Leading More, Coded Vortex, and
Yeah, a lot of
couple
people
others.
have been playing this deck. It's super cool.
It's good. It's a very good 2-cube deck. You snap, you do the thing, they retreat. It's a good steady climbing deck. All right, Galactus Thanos, good. Other
Boom.
deck, post Infinite that I was playing. We talked about it briefly. Monkey Sarah with Kitty Pryde. The only thing I'll say about this is Jeff probably want to run Sentinel instead, but I mean Jeff's been good. Kitty Pryde's just good. We questioned whether Kitty Pryde would be a good card with the change.
She is.
And
It's
the
so
answer
good.
is it is really strong. A lot of fun. Zabu maybe a bit sus in here. The packages really felt good overall. So I'm pretty happy with this. The only thing I don't like about this deck is that it just folds to Wave, Sandman, and Galactus, and so I would not recommend playing this if you're not Infinite yet, because you're gonna have a lot of bad matchups. It's very good against Patriot though, so if Patriot becomes a rising star, both Shang-Chi and Enchantress are really good into that Patriot build, so could be something
Definitely.
to consider about. Yeah, so those are the decks I've been playing. Cope Sarah, I got 40 and 27 for a 58.8% win rate, 55 cubes, and my stats with Concerned Mom Galactus Thanos. I will tell you
That's
them
a lot.
really.
That's like 7.5 ranks.
Yeah, that's
You have
good.
to like
Yeah,
reevaluate how much cubes are worth.
And the Concerned Mom Galactus Thanos. 87 and 58% win rate plus 74 cubes. Most of those games were pre-infinite, although I have played a little bit post-infinite. Funny enough, I've been experimenting a lot, so my rank isn't that good post-infinite. I'm like 115 or 116 right now, just not terrible. But I've been punting a lot too. But just having fun.
Nice.
So yeah.
Yep.
All right, zombies, what do you got here? What is this Guardians of the Galaxy deck?
Okay, we have Guardians, we have a Galaxy, we have a big purple man, and we have lane control. And this is kind of all I really want to play in Marvel Snap. I've toyed
Got
with a few
Jeff.
different versions. Yeah, we got Jeff, so I mean that's really all you need for a good deck. But I have experimented with Blue Marvel a bit as well in place of the Rocket or the Star-Lord.
Yeah, but this
I keep
is
going back and forth. I know I
I
want
like
to
your
have them all.
like Daughters of Thanos deck, right?
Yeah, that's basically the Daughters of Thanos deck is this deck card for card, but I put in Blue Marvel over Rocket Raccoon. And that's the version I've been playing a ton of. And I like Rocket, mainly because you can weave him in on the final turn with Gamora, or like on a Storm turn, you can like Rocket Star-Lord Nebula or Rocket Stone. So I did miss cutting him a bit, but I really liked the Blue Marvel. I also ended up going away from Lad too. I'm trying to think, what did I change there? I put Dino back in, because I mean Dino's always been like a mainstay in Thanos decks, and it's for good reason. He's just, you know what I realized with Thanos, you want a handful of impactful 5-drops to ramp into on turn 4, because when you go 5-drop into 5-drop, man, it
Yeah.
is kind of backbreaking sometimes. And some people might be surprised. No, I almost said Professor X. No Daredevil. And with this deck, I feel like I'm confident with it to the point where I don't need to see what they're doing. I kind of just know based off of like I'll lock a lane down with Storm, or I can preemptively set up with Spider-Man, or usually looking at what the opponent's doing, especially if I played Nebula and I'm kind of like trying to. Nebula is great with like Storm and everything else, but sometimes Nebula is just good at baiting people to play in a place where you don't care about, and you just do your stuff in other lanes. It's really a quite powerful card in that respect, even if it stays a 1-1 the whole game, which has happened and will happen more now because of Kitty Pryde. It's Nebula still like has an impact in terms of messing with your opponent's game plan. So I've changed this version a bit. This version's really solid. I had good numbers with this version. The slightly tweaked version where minus Rocket, minus Lad, plus Dino, plus Blue Marvel, I like a little bit better. But if you're in a Guardians mood, this version performs just fine. Honestly, Drax has been better than I thought he'd be, but he could also just be Jessica Jones. Drax is just a little bit better at the end of the game. And the Thanos stones, I think this is in part because I'm not seeing a lot of Darkhawk. I think if I saw a lot of Hawk, I would either consider running a non-Thanos version or at least one tech card to deal with it. Probably Shang over Enchantress, just because, especially with the Blue Marvel version, there's a bit of collateral damage there with Enchantress and some of the Thanos stones in this case too. But if you see a lot of Hawk, you do want to run something but at the same time, a lot of these Hawk decks, they are very timid at playing the Hawk because they don't want you to know where it is so you can blow it up.
Right.
And so a lot of the time, I find they're holding it till the end, or they try and play it in the Storm lane and I push it out with Jug or something. But when they hold it to the end, by the end of turn 5, like a lot of times 2 lanes are closed.
Yeah.
Like, the only way you're getting in here is like Jeff or maybe Doom. You're not getting that Darkhawk in my lanes. And that's kind of what I like about this deck is lane lock is criminally underplayed. It just consistently puts up results for me. I find it incredibly fun to play. It's kind of like the only deck I've been playing for the past like week or two. And I like other decks. This is just the most fun thing for me. I just wanted to play Gamora and the fancy new Thanos, and I've been having fun with it, and it's been doing well. So what more can you ask for? The Guardians finally have their day.
I love it.
It's beautiful.
Well, it's funny you bring it up because I've been playing something very similar, and I
You're doing like the Lad control, like the old Lad control.
And
that was a very solid deck.
I looked at your Lad control. I looked at NHL's list. I looked at some others that I've seen people posting.
The Titania, yeah.
And I like this. I'm not settled on this. I think the Titania probably has to go because it really the only time you play it is like in a full.
It's with Goblin, right? Like that's your package for the most. Or if you're behind, you can play it as a 1/5 on the final turn.
You can play it on the final turn. You can play it like with Professor
Spider-Woman,
or with like Professor X lane, or you can play it in a Storm lane, or like it's very risky, and you end up sitting on it, right? Like you don't want to like fake with it and then have it bounce. It's not good.
Too many mind games, and it can go wrong when you just slam it out there without a plan. Yeah,
but I think what is core here. I like the Daredevil just because I got the Knull version, and of course Jeff.
He's fine. Like I think that's gonna be like a player preference thing. Like I think it's totally okay to run Daredevil in these decks. I just haven't really missed him.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree. Like I don't know that it's really needed. It gives you some info.
But also part of that's the Thanos ramp thing, because some of the times I'm Professor X, like I'm doing it on 4 when people don't expect it. So I wouldn't be getting as much Daredevil value anyway, unless I'm like also Spider-Manning. But as long as you throw Storm, Spider-Man, and Professor X into a deck, like you have the 3 pinnacles of lane control. You can really, I really like Juggernaut too, because it just not only does it solidify your Storm lane, but it helps you at the end of the game sometimes. Like sometimes a lane will be locked or a lane will be full of 1/1, and I'm like, I can't put out huge power here. Oh, let me just push you somewhere else. Right. And it's fine.
It's I love the play. So the spicy plays here, Storm, and then follow up with a Juggernaut. So they play a card and you push it out. Spider-Man into Professor X to lock that.
Or even just on 5 is his own version of X, right? Like Spider-Man. Again with Doom or whatever, but it's still really good as just a lockout on 5.
Yeah. I like Doom in here. Like Doom can't go into a Professor X lane, but Doom can go into a Storm lane. And so I've liked Doom. I experimented with a few other cards. wanted, like, I was kind of with you in terms of wanting low curve cards because it would often feel
That's
like
what I like about Thanos is he gives me all these cards I can play, and it's kind of nice because you have like a backup tempo strategy. Like you can kind of be like a little bit of a zoo deck if you,
Mhm.
and that's good with lane lock because you want a bunch of little things to slam down and where your storm's going. That's kind of been my favorite thing about it. It lets me have one drops without actually having to put one drops like dedicated one drops in my deck.
Yeah, it's good. Titan or Nebula's been really good. I think that like
Spider Woman. Oh no,
yeah. So
Nebula.
here's
I'm confused. I'm sorry. I confused Nebula and Gamora. I'm like Gamora's not on this list now
no.
that their
Well,
names
so I've
mixed up.
experimented with it, right? So Nebula's is very good.
She's great.
Green Goblin is kind of I don't know. You know, I pulled Green Goblin and Titania from Marty's list, and they're okay, but I'm not sold on them.
I
Um,
used to like that version a lot with like Sentry, and I'm sure it's still a fine deck. But man, have I just enjoyed this version more. And I don't know if it's just because I find the style a bit more fun to play. Uh, but like
I think
I,
yeah.
I don't think I can go back to the old version because I
I'll
don't think it's gonna be as
I'll
fun
have
to
to
me.
try yours because I love the style of it. I tried Nightcrawler, which I think was fun. There was so much movement that I experimented with Miles because
Mhm.
there's so much move. Like even with Juggernaut,
You only
it
need two
counts.
pieces. Yeah, like you have Jeff
Um,
and you have Juggernaut. That's enough to justify a Miles in my book.
I tried it. Iron Lad is pretty good, and Gamora is really good. I like
Yeah, you
Spider.
gotta cut Goblin if you put Lad in this deck.
Oh, 100%.
That would be
I
really funny though.
I did like Spider Woman after the buff. Like 5/8 is good, and
He's a
it
good card.
and it
Underrated.
downs their stuff. I just but I tried Gamora as well, which is really good.
He's also good.
Um, the 4 slot, like I ended up with Enchantress because I was seeing so much Darkhawk,
I
and
think
so
that's what this deck needs, to be honest. Like the big weakness that this deck has, and the lane lock in general has, is when you storm and you don't have a follow up, you feel very awkward.
yeah.
And you can get back there with Doom a bit. Like my version isn't running Doom, but the non-Thanos version I did run Doom for that reason. But I think that's what this could use a bit more of is I've really appreciated either Jessica Jones or Drax because like I don't know, a 4/8's just pretty decent for the cost and it just kind of helps close the lane.
Yeah,
It's good
I
follow
agree.
up. Is like what's our follow up here? It's mainly we either have to play smaller stuff, we have to like goblin them, maybe we enchantress if we don't have priority. Obviously Jug's the best follow up.
In the storm, like once you storm, yeah, you really it's either Goblin or Juggernaut.
Yeah. I think you definitely and because goblin's not always gonna be enough, like unless you have like
Goblin is
a
not.
substantial
I
lead.
don't really. I'm not feeling the Goblin here. Like I would pull very easily, pull out the Titania, pull out the Goblin, and then maybe swap out Spider Woman with something else. The Doom has felt pretty good, but not always. Like if you need power on turn
Mhm.
6, like Doom goes wide, which is great, but is not gonna win you a lane
Yeah,
against.
I felt that too. Like sometimes this deck suffers from not having things that go tall, and that's where Spider Woman's good, right? Because she's the one thing in this list that's kind of tall. And that's what I've also liked about Thanos, because sometimes I'm just slamming that Thanos on 6 because he's 10 power. And that's why I put Devil Dino back in the Thanos version, because the deck was lacking like a big thing to do. And
Yeah.
now it's like you can both go wide and you can go tall, which is I think sometimes a weakness of the lane control. Because if things don't quite work out, you have trouble fighting for like a final lane. Because outside of Spider Woman, what our highest power is 5. Like it's just we just don't have a lot of power if we aren't able to execute the lane control plan.
Oh, how does Iron Lad work with all the Thanos stones in there, the Infinity Stones? That seemed
It
like.
just copies it. It just does what the card does. It
I mean, I
draws you a
guess
card and
I.
does the effect. I
I
don't actually run Lad in the Thanos anymore, but he was fine. It was fine.
what did
I
you
just
swap Lad
wasn't.
out for? Oh, Dino.
So yeah, I took out Lad and I took out Rocket for Dino and Blue Marvel. So kind of leaning on the old school style Thanos.
You kind of always want to run Dino and Thanos because
It's
your
so
hand.
good. I don't know how
Yeah.
I ever did not run the Dino in that version. Like I think I posted it. I think Lambie said something. You know what it is? I posted this Guardians version on screen because I was like, "Hey, I'm having fun with this," and I mentioned I was using this for my quest, the do the Star-Lord quest.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think Lambie made a comment which I totally agreed with, which is like, yeah, just throw like a Dino in here and we're gaming. And you're right. You're super. Of course, he's right. He's played like more games than Thanos than anyone. And he was super right. Like the deck felt noticeably better because I mean that was a commonly powerful play pattern in Thanos, right? Was ramp stone on 3, play a 5 on 4, and do a 5 on 5, and it's really good in the lane control version too. Like it turns out, cheating out powerful 5 cost cards is good.
Oh, surprise.
Like Gamora X Blue Marvel Dino, we can go tall, we can go wide. It's incredibly versatile, and I think that's what makes it so fun. And then Thanos gives you the element of games don't always play out the same. Like, yeah, I'm usually lane controlling people, but I get a lot more variety in like, oh, this game I played a bunch of stones, this game I didn't. It's just very fun.
I noticed a severe lack of early game stuff to do. And so having the stones to draw and to
They feel so good for the early game. That's like they let me play an early game. Obviously, they do take up space in your deck, but I'm not sacrificing card slots for them, which is really the big thing because there's so many cards I want to run in this deck. And obviously, you don't have to run the Guardian stuff. I think Gamora is actually like way too good to cut personally. Drax is like a personal preference. Jessica or another good 4-drop. Star-Lord and Rocket can be hit or miss. Rocket's sometimes cool because I liked him in the not Thanos version because having something to play with Gamora on the final turn, it's a lot of power. People don't expect it, and they're good in the Storm lane, right? Because like if you don't get your Juggernaut, the Guardians are pretty good because they're probably going to play there, or they're probably going to play in your Nebula lane. So like you can guess pretty accurately with the Guardians, and then they're pretty good cards.
I like it.
It makes me really happy because I wanted them to be good so badly, and they were not. And I tried really hard to play a Guardians deck like months ago, and it was just miserable.
Well, I'm glad they pushed it, and like you said, apropos, like it's very good timing for the movie. This cross promotion or cross contamination, right?
Yeah,
however you want to refer to it, but
cross contamination.
It's great. I love the list, and if just play lane lock. Try it, people. You would be surprised at how effective it is and how fun it can be. I know not everyone's gonna like it, but man, it's my thing to do. I love it.
I've really enjoyed it, especially coming from Thanos, or Galactus, which sort of is a lane lock in a different sense, but it is very fun archetype, and you think about the games very differently.
That's what I love about it. You know what it is? I'm no longer, and Safety Blade, I think this resonated with him. He felt the same. I like this deck because my options are not, I'm either going taller than whatever big thing you're doing, or I'm going to play a counter card like Enchantress or Shang-Chi and hopefully guess where you play your card and flip the game and win. You don't have to do that you don't have to do either of those things. You don't have to go overly tall, but you can. And you don't have to guess with tech cards because we don't run any tech cards. We just lock them out of the lane. I don't need my tech card to deal with your thing if you can't play your cards. Like the amount of like lane lock one lane and then Spider-Man their mostly empty lane on the final turn into retreat. I've lost count. Like it just gets people, and nobody's playing it. No, like Safety mentioned, like I'm the only person he runs into that's also playing it.
Well, I'm convinced. Like I've been experimenting with different versions of it, and I hadn't found one that had totally gelled. I don't have stats because I've been playing on iPad mostly, but I've climbed with it, and it's super fun. So I'll try this version for sure. Because we can
do some co-op after the show, which we definitely should try and wrap up because I just saw the timestamp.
Well, it's a lightning round, and
yes,
and you guys,
we got excited.
I little lane lock mini show.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'll tell you what. I don't care going this long, and people seem to like it, and they're sticking around. It's just the lights that kill me. So I don't know. maybe next time, like after hour 2 or something, we can switch it to like Born to be Cosmo After Dark, where like I look like this instead. Yeah, there we go. It's awesome. I just look like a silhouette now.
Oh, no,
a Ghost fan.
It's cool. I have a solution for that. Hold on.
No.
Yes, the Iron Man, the Kid Iron Man.
I am Iron Man. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up. We'll get into some games. Really appreciate y'all hanging out. We always have a lot to talk about because we're a twice monthly podcast. I think the solution, you mentioned this, Nate, is, well, we'd have less to talk about if we met every week. So maybe that's something that we'll need to have a serious conversation about. But until then, Zombies, the full-time Marvel Snap content creator, where can folks find your fabulous content?
Okay, yeah. So I do stuff on YouTube. Need to get back to doing a bit more of that. But been streaming. You can find ZombiesGoNomNom YouTube, Zombies with a Z on Twitch, Twitter, tweet out stuff. Some hot takes sometimes if you're into those, and mainly deck lists and some memes. And then I'm doing some content for the cool folks at Marvel Snap Zone, so you can check out their YouTube channel, Marvel Snap Zone. I'm doing the Infinite Decks of the Week, so if you hit Infinite and you have a cool deck you did it with, you should tag me or tag the Snap Zone Twitter or Snap Decks. They're another one who they're very good about sharing decks with the community. So tag one of these people and you have a shot at getting your deck featured because I like to feature some like cool stuff. We saw some really, I think I've only done it twice, and we do it on Sunday, so it's coming up very shortly. And it's really fun to see. I love seeing the different stuff people end up making it to Infinite with, because there are some spicy brews in there, and it's really cool. I love seeing when people have success with their own homemade deck, because it's always a good feeling.
Yeah, man, I saw a pretty cool Galactus deck in there the other day.
yeah. This guy named Nate. I was surprised he got there. He did it.
I wonder how that happened.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Very good, very good. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at NateWolfeTCG, NateWolfeTCG. I do a Marvel or whatever it's called, Hearthstone podcast every week on Friday nights here, Wild Hearthstone, called Born to be Wild. And yeah, but having a ton of fun with Snap. In fact, I think I'm morphing into this like Hearthstone out of obligation, Snap for fun, and am really enjoying it a lot. And so I always look forward to this.
That's one thing. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's good. I'm done anyways.
I just wanted to say, and because I wanted to say this earlier, but it totally slipped my mind with, the 1,000,001 things we had to talk about. But one thing that was really unfortunate with the less than the compliment sandwich of things in the update was the actual game itself in terms of gameplay has been really, really good for the past, since the April patch. They've just been kind of knocking it out of the park, and I think the gameplay has been pretty universally enjoyed for the most part. So, and you saying, how you're playing more Snap just reminded me of that, because I really do want to praise that. The game, in spite of these flaws about the economy and some less than desirable decision-making regarding rotation, the actual game is super fun right now. I'm very enjoying the game. The game's super fun. So, it's worth mentioning because it was not like that a few months ago. There were issues. You don't have to remember that far back.
It's been really good, actually. It's very enjoyable, even if I'm losing. And it's been refreshing to see these changes, and like we've said many times, it's it feels like a new meta all the time. So it's been very enjoyable for me. I love the game. I'm a Marvel Comics nerd on top of it, and so
is great.
Every time we see a new location or a new card, or we're like, oh yeah, that's cool. Hey, zombies, that's from Daredevil.
I love that. Watching the Guardians movies again the other day, I was like, oh, it's Xandar. I know Xandar now. It's not just this planet full of people. It gives your characters +1 attack. I was like,
it's nowhere.
Cool seeing, and they went to nowhere. Yeah, I thought it was fun. It was
Yeah.
fun, like seeing the locations I knew from Snap. It was really a good time.
For sure, for sure. All right, Blue, where can people find you?
Twitter.
At Blutrane.
At Blutrane. I put all the links in chat for your Twitters, YouTubes. Also, want to just give a special thanks to SnapZone.
Yeah.
We tend to use a lot of their graphics on our show because they're really
Shout
good.
out to Kirilos for those. I believe she handles all the graphics.
They're very good, and we steal them all the time.
But we credit them, and it's just a good group of people. Zombies, you were recently on their Can't Stop Snapping podcast. It's very, very,
too.
Very kind of you and them to shout out our work. Very, very, very easygoing. I like it.
Super nice people, very invested in the community, and it's just a good group of folks. I was super excited to work with them because, I mean, seeing all the cool stuff Safety's done with them, and he's had nothing but great things to say. And so far with my experience, I mean, it's pretty much all the same. I really don't have any complaints. They're very flexible, and they appreciate the work that I'm doing, and it's been nice. It's been really good.
So yeah, thank you to them for being wonderful people. That's it. So if you've stuck around to the end of this podcast, congratulations, you've won the internet.
There's an achievement for that.
God, I really thought
our longest episode yet, probably.
We'll keep it short tonight, right, guys? Yeah. 4 hours later.
Let's get this over with. Let's get this.
Man, I can crack the whip, but honestly, like I said, if it wasn't for the light, I wouldn't care because it's fun to talk. It's just
I get it.
It really does a number on my eyes.
Those things are bright. I'm a quote unquote professional, and I still don't use like a ring.
Oh, that's why I'm like sweating over here because the lights are so bright, and it gets hot.
It does. Yeah. Oh, I have a whole whatever it's called. Like I have a whole panel one, but I never use it. I just got it because my mom used to use it for her stuff, and she was gonna get rid of it. I was like, I'll take it. Those are money, and I could use it, but it gives off too much heat, and it also maybe I can turn it on just to show you guys. It's like a floodlight. This thing is big and it is bright. Like I don't want to blind the viewers. Like it's really it's funny, but I know what you mean about those heated lights. Like they do heat up quite a bit.
Yep.
And even if they're not hot, the light in your eyes all the time is just kind of tiring.
That like LED or fluorescent light is also bright. Not the most nice.
Yeah.
So do we have like any like Chat GPT like poem to like ease us out for the day, or?
No, we don't. So funny you mention. I didn't use Chat GPT at all this week.
I knew something. I knew something was a little bit worse this week.
Something was off.
So we're done with the podcast now, but I'll tell you all a little story. I'll keep it really brief.
Wait, you didn't say the magic words.
Oh, thank you for joining us this week for another fantastic episode of Born to be Cosmo, where we talk about all things Marvel Snap twice monthly. Guys, if you want to check us out on YouTube, you can do so. And remember, keep it Cosmo.
Big Cosmo.
Enough said, bub.